Okay, we have public comments, and I have several written ones that I will read after the public makes the public these are public comments, but okay. Anybody with a comment on any item, any issue, not necessarily anything on the agenda, just come to the podium and state your name and address, please.
My name is Dale Hadler, 1723 West 6th Street. That's in Winona. And I want to address the discussion about raising the animal unit cap. Several weeks ago, I attended a conference in agriculture in La Crosse. They talked about the substantial amount of climate gases that are produced by large feedlots and animal and large farming operations. I'm not going to get into debating climate change. I'm not going to get into debating the information, but I've had at least several people comment about wanting the cap lowered and not raised because of this issue. I think before you pursue this, you need to realize that there are sentiments across the board about what to do with this, and I think you really risk further dividing the county if you pursue this. I don't know if any of you have been approached about climate change, this issue, and I don't really have an opinion on whether it should be lowered or not because I don't know that much about it, but I've been approached by several people who have raised this issue. One of them is the mother of a 5-year-old child that's a good friend of mine. The other is a young woman who's going to graduate from Winona State very soon with a background in environmental science. I know that at least 2 county commissioners know both of these young women. And, the comments I've heard from both of them was, why would you want to raise it? They haven't said you should lower it, but I've heard other people say, it should be lowered. It's going to open a can of worms. It's going to divide the county again. And you've got a whole new factor now, especially after this winter, that's going to be brought into it. So I think you need to think about what the impact of doing this could be. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, thanks for opening this up to the public. My name is Bob Reddig, 24450 Gilmer Valley Road, also County 21 up in the Ridge. 3 things. Number 1, County Road 21, Gilmer Valley Road on the Ridge is breaking up. And the county engineer says there's no plans to do anything about it for 5 years. By that time, it might be crushed rock. So I would, and I don't know if the board has done this or not, but I think it would be appropriate for the board to have a resolution to raise the gas tax in Minnesota to fix some of these roads and to index it to inflation. Number 2, the staff evaluations for Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment. I found it very valuable when I was on there for 6 years. And it helps to keep it legal because you can't just say I'm against it or for it. You have to go by the findings, and which can be subjective. And I think the split vote on the BOA showed that that the commissioners were adults and able to think for themselves. Number 3, the animal cap. I think it is due for review, but as Dale took my words away, it'd be a can of worms. To open it up, it would be double trouble, as the Chinese like to say, where there is no trouble. You can make double trouble, but there is probably some trouble there. I think it should not be assumed, as Dale said, that the cap would go up. I think the scientific evidence and pressure would be for the cap to go down. And so I think when you think about opening this up for review, you should think about the people that have to be on the committees, et cetera, the research necessary, the cost to the county. We're talking about county funds all the time, but not having them. And so in some of the things that would be in the argument already would of course be concentration with the risk for disease. The Wisconsin study that showed E. coli and nitrates concentrated around feedlots, large or small. But so the general welfare of the county. So if we do open it up, I would of course advocate for lowering the unit. Thank you.
I'm Amy Cordry, 26006 County Road 9. That's Winona, out in Cedar Valley. And I'm not going to go into the personal feelings I have about the animal cap, but I will say this. Our experience on a small farm raising cattle, we found early on there was a limit to the number of cattle and the manure produced that our farm could handle. All right? And I would like to refer to what Bob Reddig just referred to, which was the study released on February 28th of this year by the U.S. Department of Agriculture microbiologist, Mark Barkworth. and he found using DNA markers. And that's highly scientific, and it's time we got people to recognize science is true. No one's making it up, and it's not an opinion. This microbiologist found a link between contaminated wells and feedlots and manure application on fields. So there it is. I feel that Winona County is ahead of the curve here with an animal cap. We will see the day in the near future when more counties and places follow us rather than fight us. And to review this again is a waste of everyone's time. So to use your words very efficiently, Marcia, getting people to recognize this, I have here, if I may approach the board, I have the article in case you didn't see it. May I approach the board with that article?
Did you bring copies for the press?
Sure, I have
Okay.
plenty of copies.
Okay.
And I'll bet there's a copy close by. Excuse me, no personal offense intended there, Greg, sorry.
Are you okay?
Little kids, but talking in front of the phones is a little different. There you go, I think it's just a moment. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Hello, Ben Daly. I live 17755 County Road 18. And like Ms. Codre, we also know that you can only have so many animals on the land. And so we try to do the same thing that she's doing on a different scale, obviously, but we try to do the same thing. So it's no different between a small and a large farm. You can only have so many animals there. No different. We were here, I was here in 2015, speaking in front of 4 of you about the same issue. And during that period of time, Mr. Olson said a variance is an option. Well, we tried to do that, and it didn't go in our favor. So in any case, we're here again with this same topic. Things have changed since 2015, and things have changed definitely since '98. When the animal cap was put into place. Who are you listening to? I think I've brought that up before. We've had, in our case anyway, all of the townships and all of the rural cities speak on our behalf. They knew we were going to go over the cap. They knew it, and they supported it. So who are you listening to? Is it people in Wiscoy Valley? Is it people of LSP? Who are you listening to? It has to be brought up. It also has been brought up that it's a smokescreen between the urban and rural divide. Well, if we have that many people who voted and supported us in the rural community, and the 3 county commissioners, I don't know what you're going to do. But who are you listening to? Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Doug Nopar, 29440 County Road 17. On the animal unit cap. The animal unit cap is not the source of problems in the dairy industry. The farming community is deeply fractured on the animal unit cap, divided between those farmers that think overproduction is the problem and those that feel there should be no limits to production. It's not an urban versus rural issue. If you spend time out in the country, you will realize that really quickly. Please do not move forward with a very contentious, divisive discussion on the animal unit cap. Instead, I encourage you to put county resources towards things that will benefit many people, like helping Ladybird Meats reopen their USDA processing facility and help them look for a buyer and arrange financing, something that would serve many farmers, or expanding cover crop funding in the county. Last year, The SWDCD had 40 applications for cover crop cost share in the county, only half of which they were able to fund. These are things that can help a lot of people. Lastly, on the suggestion coming out of the Board of Adjustment, hearing that people who are members of community groups should not serve on county boards or committees or need to recuse themselves when discussions that they care about come up is really out of line. And that does not just go for the Land Stewardship Project, that goes for Farm Bureau, Farmers Union, landowners of Winona County. Who knows, we might have a gun control issue come up in the county. Does that mean people who are involved in the NRA or in gun control groups can't serve on county committees? In a small community, don't we want people that are deeply engaged to be involved? Thank you.
Okay, for the second time, is there anyone wishing to speak before the board on any issue this morning? You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
I'd like to speak as a cancer survivor. My cancer was estrogen fed, and so I'm very, very careful about the food and the water that I drink. I do not drink any water out of plastic bottles because there are phytoestrogens in them. And I understand that I see people coming from the Lewiston area to use the reverse osmosis systems here in Winona. And, you know, they're here doing their shopping or whatever, and they fill up their plastic bottles. I've done the same for many years. I had a reverse osmosis water filter under my sink. And as I used it for a number of years, I was concerned about no minerals in my water. So I started getting my water at a natural spring up in Shakopee. And I go up through that area enough that I can usually have that spring water. Now, if we already have our more shallow wells contaminated, and there's a, you know, we're on a karst topography, I would think that it would be ultimately important that the county be protecting our water. Oh, by the way, I just remembered that I'm Lynette Power, 252 East 8th Street in Winona. So if we have to resort to plastic bottles to transporting our water or just buying water from companies, we're going to have all this plastic bottle waste. And already our recycling system is faulty. My renters will not cooperate with me on the plastic recycling because they say, well, it's just getting thrown in the garbage anyway. So we have another great big issue. What are we doing with all this plastic that we're supposedly recycling? And then are we going to add to that problem by everybody having to go to plastic bottles? The wells are not going to, the first layer of wells are contaminated. Now what if our aquifer gets contaminated? So I think you guys have a really huge decision here to make because it's going to affect all of our health and the future generations.
Can you finish your sentence, please? Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I didn't come here for this. Jim Biggie, 25823 County Road 9. I didn't come here to discuss this farm thing, but I have to. Daly's run a farm, and it's a business, just like any other business. Have any of you went up and seen his farm? It's a very nice farm. They do a very nice job. Just like the businesses in Winona, they stay on top of all of their problems. If there's a problem in Winona with pollution and other things, that company deals with it. The same way with Daly's. Now, in Lewiston, do they check their water? Is there a problem with the water? Is the places around there checking their water? Is there a problem? And if so, then there should be a cap. But if there isn't at this time, what is the problem? And if dailies are going to bring more jobs to the area, what is the problem? Do we need more jobs? Is there unemployment? Is Lewiston have enough people that we don't need more jobs? I don't see, do we, what is their problem? Do they have problems with their manure, that they're not doing it right? Are they farming wrong? Who are we to judge them if they're doing something right? I mean, if they're doing something right, leave them do it. We're not here to judge the companies in Winona. If they're doing something right, we leave them do it. They're hiring, they're doing things. Let dailies do it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Good morning. Shelley DePestle, 18942, County Road 18, Lewiston, Minnesota. Speaking to the animal unit cap, the county is divided on this, obviously. The county is disregarding all the cities and townships in greater Winona County. The county will kill dairy farming in Winona County as we know it, with their current practices of disallowing people to grow and expand. This is how we will continue the next generation of farming for the next 30 years. If we don't have this, it will die, just as many small farms have died without being able to bring in the next generation. In 1998, the Board of Adjustment member Sherry Hales spoke out against the animal unit cap exceeding 750 animal units. This was recorded in board meeting minutes of April of 1998. Unbiased people who have open-minded judgment is very important to the due process of the citizens of Winona County. I'll quote Doug Nopar, NRA membership should be looked, are we going to look at those people if we're going to put together a committee on gun control? Would we place those people on a committee to talk about gun control? Or what, could we get simply unbiased folks? We have biased people put in committees determining people's fates. They've been placed there and they're working as a hand of an organization who is out to kill large-scale dairy in Winona County. Thank you.
Okay, for the third and final time, is there anyone wishing to speak on any issue before the board?
Jane Cogill, 317 Walnut Street. I would really like to see if we can get past this rural city business. There are many people in the city who love the countryside and want to have it managed in a really way that can benefit everybody. I think that you're more likely to have small farms go out of business when you allow the huge farms to keep on expanding, because smaller farms are not going to be able to compete with those bigger farms. And that is one good reason to keep the animal cap the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Tim Aarons from County Road 31 in Altura. I'd just like to say whether you raise, lower, or maintain the animal unit cap, I think it's been kind of mischaracterized as the central issue facing broader Winona County. I think farmers need assistance at this time to survive through what are devastating commodity markets. And also I think drinking water is, particularly in Utica and Fremont townships, is really nothing short of a crisis at this time. I do agree that manure is an important and a valuable resource in our county, and that shouldn't be forgotten. I just think that we need to do everything we can to discontinue the practice of serving it to citizens as a contaminant in municipal and public wells, and I don't think that necessarily relates to farm expansion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have some comments that have been addressed to me and asked me to read into the public record. This first one is from Abby Marie Engler, 25014 Blackberry Road. Good morning, members of the county board. My name is Abby Marie Engler. I live 25014 Blackberry Road in Wilson Township. I'm married to Zachary and we have 3 young children. I regret I'm unable to make it to the meeting this morning. I work part-time at Rushford Peterson, and I'm at work. I work 32 and a half hours a week for $11.30 an hour and spend the remainder of my time raising my boys. My husband operates his family's generational dairy farm. He was born and raised working on the farm and recently took over all operations when his father passed away 3 years ago. The farm has 30 milking cows and 70 other cows for a total of 100 head of cattle. He makes what he can from farming. In addition, he makes $400 a week working for Blackberry Ridge Farms, and we are able to live rent-free on land owned by Blackberry Ridge. With our current jobs, we still have to collect the following government assistance: $347 a month in food stamps, medical assistance. All 5 of us are covered with no out-of-pocket expenses. SEMCAC Emergency Fund, energy assistance, and weatherization assistance paid us a total of $2,000 for electric and gas bills during the year 2018. My children receive free school meals. Rushford Peterson School sends my children home with a backpack of food every Friday. I also receive assistance from WIC. My family lives frugally between paychecks and tax refunds. Yet, even with the government assistance, there are times we just cannot make it. 2 years ago, we had to replace a truck. This past year, we had to replace the vehicle I used to transport the kids. Fortunately, my father and brother, both residents of the city of Winona, were able to assist and provide the $7,000 in payments. I'm writing this for this meeting because I see there are 3 matters on the board's agenda that affect my family. The first is a working session discussing the criteria for evaluating outside agency funding requests. The second and third ones relate directly to the Daily Farm's recent application and denial of a variance and are listed as discussed policy for staff. 2 items on the agenda. I ask that during the discussion of all these items, the board consider the effects of their decisions on my family and other rural small farm families that struggle to make ends meet and have to rely on government assistance to maintain a living. Further, I ask 2 specific things of the board. First, to discuss and determine whether the board has taken up such matters as it is today after any other variance has been denied in Winona County, or if these matters are being addressed solely because of the Daily Farm's denial. Second, I would ask each board member to openly disclose whether the Daily Farms has contributed to their election campaigns. If so, how much, and if they have any other business or financial interests in the Daily Farms. While I'm grateful that the board does what it can to keep property taxes low for rural residents like myself, in reality I rely heavily on government programs. My kids enjoy going to the library. My concern is that the board's focus is not for those families like myself, but for families that are well off and have the ears of the board members listening to them. The board serves as a representative for the entire county, rich, poor, rural, and non-rural. I merely seek that the board not forget about the poor rural county residents in need of government assistance, who may not be as influential to the county decision makers and who have a diminishing ability to survive as established farms grow bigger and bigger. The other item is a package of research and different information, policy brief from the Winona, Wisconsin Farmers Union, and this has been sent in by Dale Hadler, and I will make this packet and this letter available to all the commissioners and to the public with copies as soon as we can get copies made. So these are now entered into the public record. So is there anyone else? I think I asked 3 times. Okay, so I'll close the public comment session. Thank you very much for your comments. I look for approval of the county board minutes of February 26, 2019. They're on page 14 of the agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Jacob, a second by Commissioner Olson. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes of February 26th signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Let's do consent comments and approval of the agenda. Comments?
Yeah, I have one item. 5.3 needs to be removed from the agenda. The person withdrew their application for the Human Rights Commission.
Okay, remove item 5.3. Comments or agenda items, Commissioner Ward?
I have two comments, please.
Okay. Commissioner Meyer?
Nothing, thanks.
Okay. I have two requests for agenda items at the end.
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Jacob?
One comment, please.
Okay. So I look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended, which is deleting item 5.3.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Ward. Any discussion? All those in favor? I do have one discussion item. On item 5.5, which deals with the service agreement, purchase of service agreement with Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center. I am a member of that board currently, and so I will abstain from consent for item 5.5. Any other discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, the agenda is amended and approved. Administrator Fritz. Administrator, yes.
Yes.
Mr. Ken.
I will read the consent agenda into the record. Committee recommendations: approve 5.1, approve conditional use permit for Roger and Melanie Brand and Buell Consulting to allow for construction of telecommunication tower with accessory building and equipment. 5.2, approve interim use permit for James and Dawn Buge for manufactured home located in Shoreland District, in addition to primary dwelling for occupants that provide health care and part-time farm help. 5.3 was removed from the agenda. 5.4 is approved purchase contract with Driftless Region Vector Control LLC for mosquito abatement services. 5.5, approved purchase of services agreement with Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center for children's mental health targeted case management, Hiawatha Bluffs Nursing Services, Family Group Decision Making, Mediation Management or Medication Management Clinic, Local Advisory Council and Basic Living, Social Skills, and Community Interventions. 5.6, adopt Minnesota Merit System Equal Opportunity and Affirmative Action Guidelines. 5.7, approve amended Whitewater Joint Powers Board Agreement and Resolution. 5.8, confirm payment of disbursements, and that concludes the consent business.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the consent business as read?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Ward and second by Commissioner Jacob. All those in favor of approving the consent business as read signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, the consent business is approved. Let's jump to page 112, item 6.1 on the agenda, which is a discussion for policy for staff and legal for Board of Adjustment and Planning Commission.
Sure.
Commissioner Jacobs, sorry.
So this was an item that I asked to have on the agenda after, I guess, a comment by Commissioner Graydon at the Board of Adjustment meeting. I know a few years ago under Planning Director Jason Gilman, we had discussions about not either making recommendations or drawing conclusions in our packets. And that had been a standard policy for many years. and Commissioner Graydon brought up at that Board of Adjustment meeting that there certainly were very clear, black and white, written out conclusions made by staff and legal in that Board of Adjustment packet. And so my concern is that there's been a change in policy. How that policy happened, I don't know, but it's being handled differently than it used to be. And in my opinion, I feel as though it's maybe stifling the democratic process. I feel as though perhaps it should go back to the Planning Commission for review, discussion, and it seems as though the information should be presented, but we're elected and we appoint these people to these committees for them to deliberate and make their determinations. When there's determinations that are made prior to a public hearing where all the information really isn't in, and it's in black and white, to me it doesn't feel right, and I don't see how it really bolsters our case in the event of a lawsuit that we've laid out what the conclusions are before we've even had the public hearing and the evidence is heard. So those are my concerns, and I'm wondering if the board has any thoughts, or whether we could have the planning department look at how that's handled, and if there's a better way to bring the information forward in a manner that seems less predetermined.
Commissioner Ward.
I would agree with a lot of what Commissioner Jacobs has said. And this stems, and quite frankly, it stems from the most recent Board of Adjustment packet. I was alarmed. I was attending a week before the Board of Adjustment hearing a training. And when I went to the county website, I pulled up the document that was being provided to Board of Adjustment committee members, and it was very detailed. It was laying out the criteria, and there was items in red print. Now, when I see something in red print, that just draws your eyes to it, and that to me is alarming. When you see something in a different color print of the document, and it did not say draft. It was, and again, it was on the website. I've been through a number of planning directors in my career. We have had differences, and in a memo last night at 5:15, we received a memo or an email from County Attorney Sonneman. She cannot be here today, but she highlighted a number of things, and one of the things on the second page of that memo is, with my office's input and advice, the procedures for the Board of Adjustment and the PC were revised a few years ago to ensure that decisions are legally supportable. She didn't ask us. The county board never had a discussion of how we wanted these things changed and everything. And I'm sorry, but we are the policy decision makers of this county. So I'm offended. And I guess we allowed this to happen, and it just blatantly came to our attention with this major Board of Adjustment decision. So there's a number of things. So in my past, we had different planning directors, and everybody kind of takes it with their own little, twist on things. But I do specifically remember a planning director that used to lay out both the Board of Adjustment and the planning packets with pros and cons. You can approve it because of these criteria and this information and facts, or you can deny it because of this information and facts. It opened up the dialogue for people to have at those citizen volunteer committees. With the county attorney taking such an aggressive, in my opinion, a very aggressive, opinionated stance on our ordinance and our rules and regulations, she's kind of stepped over and not asking the right, questions of the board, of the planning commission, of the Board Adjustment members, how this information should be presented. So I think there needs to be discussion how we want it presented. And I have surveyed some, not a lot, but I have surveyed some of my neighboring counties and some counties across the state, and it is done both ways. Sometimes there's a very strict recommendation. Sometimes it's open up for discussion. And again, it was made in the public comments with a 3-2 decision on a Board of Adjustment. There is a major difference of opinion. And I've always said that a lot of this is open for interpretation. It's opinion. A lawyer has, one opinion. I probably, and some citizens have a different opinion. So again, how do we allow different opinions to make our decisions? So I think it needs review and discussion. Thank you.
Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. Sorry. I want to step back just a second. About a week ago, this entire board had a training session and did some strategic planning. And we had someone, I didn't know this, the state of Minnesota has an Office of Collaboration and Dispute Resolution. And we had some training. And the individual that came down, and there are a couple extra copies, Chris Rogers was there, so he's familiar with this. This individual talked to us in order to help us have better discussions that maybe move towards better solutions. And so what I'm passing out and what I want myself to have a copy of is a kind of a summary of what he talked about in terms of a traditional approach of towards a dispute resolution and what he called a creative problem-solving approach. So the goal is not just to win, the goal is for us to come to a wise outcome. And he encouraged us to always presume positive intent on the part of the folks that when we're having a conversation on the part of folks who maybe have an opinion different than ours, and that we should concentrate on the problem and focus on the underlying interests. And the whole goal is to come to a wise solution. So I'm probably not going to be perfect today in our conversation on these topics because they are difficult topics and I think we have a wide range of opinions on them, but I'm trying hard. So given that context, Commissioner Jacob, when you had this conversation with Jason Gilman, do you remember about what year that might have been? Because I was on the Planning Commission just for 3 years before I was elected here.
I think it was early on, so probably 13 or 14.
So 2013 or 2014? Okay, because I was really trying to understand. I was not really sure what the nature of your comments were going to be about. I was trying to figure out, our statute clearly asks our staff to provide an opinion, both for the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission. So our zoning ordinance asks for that. And the earliest packet that I could find on our website went back to 2012. To me, it looked very similar to what that packet looks like today, in that it says, when it goes through the findings of fact, it says, and it's underlined, it says staff analysis. So it's clear to the board members, at least it was always clear to me, that that is what staff is saying. It sounds like your concern is that this carries some weight that our commissioners might think is greater than their own weight of opinion. Is that about right? Like that they're being told what to think?
I would basically agree with that statement, yes.
Okay. So that's really kind of the underlying concern, is that they're going to feel like this is what they have to go along with?
If it's laid out in black and white before them by legal, yeah, I think that, I feel like the process of having a public hearing just is no different really than a trial at the court. You don't lay out the conclusions until the evidence is in, and the evidence isn't in until the public hearing has been had. So to have laid out specific black and white predetermined conclusions seems.
Okay. So would it be helpful if sometimes when you get a document, it's got kind of a watermark on it that says draft? And that was something you mentioned? That would be a thing you'd be interested in seeing?
That was obviously missing in the
And I'd like to point out that, so your 2012 packet would have been one of them that we tried to gain resolution from, that was problematic. So in 13 and 14, we had the conversations with then Planning Director Gilman that we wanted to see neutrality coming out of the planning department and legal, that predetermined decisions wouldn't be placed in the packet.
And do you feel that there is a bias coming out of legal and from our staff?
I think there was, that when it says in black and white the word conclusion, and then it says does not meet the criteria, I don't think that leaves much room for the democratic process to play out and for those people to make their own decisions.
I mean, I will say that when I was first serving on the Board of Adjustment, it was back when, was it Eric Evenson?
Yeah.
Planning Commission.
Yeah, I was on the Planning Commission, sorry, I don't know what I said.
Board of Adjustment.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was never on the Board of Adjustment. Yeah, when I was on the Planning Commission, and Planning Director Evanson, I think, was kind of struggling with that, and we did have some meetings where we didn't get help with the language for the findings of fact. And the board really did struggle with that. And I welcomed some sample language because we almost always adopt it.
And my experience with this previous planning goes back probably to in the early 2000s, and they're not on the website. We'd have to pull up those past documents to give some comparison of how they were written by a professional staff member.
Yeah. And I think that I have a concern. In the 3 years that I was on the Planning Commission, a lot of times, enough that it made me uncomfortable. The very first thing that members of the Planning Commission would do is challenge staff as to whether this individual even needed a conditional use permit. And sometimes in a way that I thought was disrespectful to our planning staff. I think we have great employees in Winona County, and I feel like sometimes we are not very supportive of them doing their job, and that's my bias, is that I want us to recognize that they are professionals, and they're just doing their job to give us the best advice that they can. And in my experience, I haven't, like most of the time when I was serving on the Planning Commission, the analysis that had to do with feedlots was supportive. If they're complying with the zoning ordinance, they were supportive. And in the time that I was on there, I think of the 4 or 5 expansions that came up, the findings from staff were positive, and we approved every one of them. So I have a bias in terms of thinking that we have a great staff and that they're doing a good job, and I want to be supportive of them. And I think that one of our speakers who's gone now, Bob Reddick, I saw that he was at the Board of Adjustment meeting, and I did note that when they needed different language, our Board of Adjustment found different language and replaced what staff had provided them. So I don't think that they were shy about taking that step. So honestly, I think if our county attorney is doing her best job to try and make our findings defensible, if they want to mark it as draft and make sure that we put a disclaimer in there that says, you know, that this is based on the information available at the time that the packet comes out and was written, I would be comfortable with that. I don't know that there's always, if they feel like it meets the criteria, I don't know that you want them to come up with reasons why it doesn't. I mean, it kind of works both ways. So, thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, I don't have any questions about whether staff is doing a good job or not. I think they do a fine job. My concern is that your statement kind of draws to that the people who question the staff didn't have the right or responsibility to question the staff. So, of course I support our staff, but I also support the democratic process playing out, which is these people who were elected, they're appointed, they come to these meetings, and if they question staff and come from a different position than what staff might, I welcome that, and I like to see that process play out. I think the reason I wanted to bring this to the agenda is I think you're making it clear that this is what the majority of this board wants, is the way it's playing out. I just want the public to know that it happened, and not by a vote of the county board. It transpired, and I think they've lost some of their ability to affect the democratic process through it. No, they
Commissioner? More? No? Okay, Commissioner Olson, excuse me.
Question for legal. At some point, the state came down with a new ruling or interpretation of Board of Adjustments and granting variances, what they had to meet, the criteria. I don't remember the year that happened. Would anything that is happening now relate to the state's new rule on variance granting?
Not exactly. What happened was there was some case law that resulted in better definitions of the standards for use variance versus area variance, and following that, the legislature went in and removed the language relating to use variance. So that's the big change that was in the statutes for Board of Adjustment. What more triggered the process that we're seeing here was the trainings and the case law that we're saying, unless you have well-reasoned written findings coming out of your meetings, the burden is now on the county to prove that they did it right, as opposed to the burden being on the challenger to prove that the county did it wrong. So that kind of helped us go in and look at our process and figure it out. We went through, I think, a year or so where we were fine-tuning. We were working with the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission to figure out what they wanted, how they wanted these things presented. That's where the red language in the findings came from, was because the members had asked us to highlight the ones that weren't consistent with statute so they could make sure to have discussions about those. And the same thing, they almost always have draft. We're not sure why that one didn't. There must have been something in the email transmission that faded it out. But we had discussions about how those should be presented, whether or not they should be pre-drafted or whether we should write them on the fly. The meetings became really, really long and difficult, and a lot of times there was struggles with it, and we were being asked to write the language anyway based on what was in staff reports. So that's where the process came from, was the case law, the trainings, and what we were being asked to do by the boards we were serving.
Okay, Commissioner Ward.
Ms. Nuttall said something very important. You asked the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment people, but I don't know that it was ever brought to the county board to approve or agree with or even have a discussion. That's an important part of the process that I think was not followed, and by Attorney Sonneman's, her office decided to do that. So I take that with a little bit of, I don't like it. In your trainings, you talk, and Ms. Nuttall provided trainings, quasi-judicial. And I've asked the question of other attorneys, should the attorney's office be quasi-judicial in providing this information? And that's all over the ballpark, too. I could go out, and the beauty of the law is specialization, like so much. So I could go out and find a land rights attorney, property rights attorney, and I would get a whole different, interpretation. That's the law. It's interpretation of facts and, findings and everything. So that's how that plays out. So I could go, and in statute, it is allowed that county boards can go outside and hire other legal representation to do land use. That is allowable. It'd be an extra expense and everything, but it is an allowable option. I'm not saying that I want to go there, but I do think that there's a bias, and I don't know that we should be providing that bias before the public hearing, where you're supposed to be quasi-judicial. And I don't know, I know we're bound by a 60-day rule. I don't know if there's somehow we could change that. But in trainings, you've always been told you go to the public hearing with an open mind. Mm-hmm. And then you make your decision as you hear the information. So when a very pointed document is handed to you a week prior to the public hearing, say some radical new information, came about at the public hearing, which it can and it should, that would change everything. But people have already read that document, and when you read something and when it's got the red highlights and everything in it and conclusions and findings of fact, it's hard to contradict that. So should we have a lawyer for the Board of Adjustment? When you go to trial, you have a defense and a prosecution and a defense. You have both sides represented. It seems like when we make land use decisions, we're not equally represented. The burden is on the applicant, and in this case, the Dailies, they did have a lawyer, and people were questioned as to their independence and their quasi-judicial, which was a good thing. But I guess I would like the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment to have a robust discussion about this, and then bring something back to the county board so we can have a robust discussion with this and decide if this is the way we really want it played out. Because I'm getting a lot of different information from other counties and other attorneys how this can play out.
Mr. Meyer.
So, do you feel that our staff and the county attorney are biased against the petitioners?
Well, first of all, I don't like the zoning document to start with. Zoning and planning is a relatively new concept in government. It's not that old. And it used to be, everybody kind of, a few basic rules. If you look at our zoning document for a county our size and everything, when it excludes the bulk of our population, it excludes the cities and municipalities, it is a cumbersome document comparative to our neighbors. So we've got a lot of rules and regulations. And they're interpreting, again, it's a matter of interpreting the rules and the regulations that they're using. But again, I've had other planning professionals interpret them, on a different standard, with a different standard. So that's where if I'd only known this one group, you wouldn't know any better. But when you've had different professionals we've had different county attorneys who didn't get so intensely involved in the land use issues, quite frankly. And so we've had a change, and I guess that's when you've seen how others have handled the function, and now we got a different group handling the same function, which is dramatically different. It's hard to figure out what's right and what's wrong.
So I think before I wanted to maybe take an action, I'd be interested in confirmation about it sounds like, Commissioner Ward, that you feel like our zoning ordinance is too oppressive, too large relative to neighboring counties?
Yes.
I'd probably be interested in understanding that better. I don't know if that's some kind of a research and presentation to the board, but I would want to.
You can just start by Googling their zoning ordinance, and it's much less, I guess. Again, my interpretation.
And
it's
are
smaller.
You thinking of a specific county?
Well, I know I've looked at Houston and Fillmore because they're a border, and I have had constituents, because my district borders up next to those, saying if I wanted to, build something in this county, there'd be no problem. If I build it on the Winona side of my land, now this is just a very generalization, I would have to, jump through all these hoops to get it done. So there is a perceived, difference. And I think there is an actual difference if you look at their documents. But again, this was passed by the board. I didn't vote for the zoning ordinance, so it's some of my personal feelings, but it is also some of my constituents' feelings.
And I do appreciate both Commissioner Jacob and Ward bringing this to us. And I take your point that the conversation to make a change on how the documents would be presented to the Board of Adjustment or the Planning Commission, that yes, the county board should weigh in on that policy. So I do appreciate that sentiment. And I would rather see that any day than for any of us to try and influence staff directly. So appreciate your willingness to put it on the agenda and talk about it.
Good. Well, with that, then I'll make a motion that we ask the Planning Commission to come up with a more neutral approach to presenting the findings of fact.
I would second that.
You asked the Planning Commission to come up with a more neutral approach?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
I don't think I'm ready to go there. I think I would need a little more information about some of the topics that Commissioner Ward has talked about in terms of the content of our zoning ordinance. I actually, as a person on the Planning Commission, had a positive experience with the packets the way that they are presented. Some minor changes, like putting draft on there or adding language, to say if you have any additional information that comes out during the public hearing, that you should consider that. But a major revamp, I'm really support that. We have a number of issues for our Planning Commission that they're supposed to be working on already.
Okay, Commissioner Olson, then we have Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, I'm not going to, and I appreciate the motion and the discussion, and I'm not going to support it, but I've had a discussion at the City of Winona level over some Board of Adjustment staff analysis and board decisions. And I think the City of Winona does it very similar to Winona County, where they provide a staff analysis. And I've disagreed with their analysis, and I've certainly contacted Board of Adjustment members concerning some different issues that they've had come before the city in my district and just in my neighborhood. And it's interesting that the Board of Adjustment has oftentimes, as in this case, deliberated the findings and come to a different conclusion. So I think the process, albeit cumbersome, it does work. I do appreciate a neutral approach where findings of facts could support either decision. And I do believe that that legal needs to weigh in heavily on this because of the challenges that may come before the county. So to have the Planning Commission decide the county's legal fate is probably not something I would support.
I think we'd be asking them to make a recommendation to us that we would review. They wouldn't decide.
That comment was not heard. Can you repeat it?
We'd be asking the Planning Commission to make a recommendation to the county board, not to make a decision for us. It would be something we would review.
Okay, Commissioner Ward.
Okay, so looking at, the comp plan and the zoning ordinance and everything, and it says, all this, it's a lot of philosophical, especially the comp plan. It's a philosophical statement of the county. And it says, and I should pull it up, but it says, to minimize, it says something about minimizing the risks and everything. And I think sometimes our discussion goes to maximizing the risk and everything. It's in the, and I apologize, I have that at home. But it talks about minimizing the risk, but yet protecting the health, safety, and general welfare. And in particular with the Planning Commission, when you're issuing conditional use permits, and it would lend itself to Board of Adjustment decisions, in my opinion, is that you can create conditions to minimize those risks and everything. We're talking about in agriculture, we're talking about best management practices, we're talking about manure management plans, we're talking about soil health plans and things like that. So again, to use the criteria that's there, but you can create a condition that could help minimize that and make it a better application. So I guess that's what I'm looking for. Is I've always had the approach that if somebody wants to do something in Winona County, somehow in a customer service mode, the customer's always right. Okay? That's a very general customer service. The customer is always right. Well, sometimes you have to modify their rightness to make it right. But how do we allow people to do what they want to do with their land that makes it minimal risk to everybody else that weighs in on it, but yet allows them to do what they want with their properties and their lands? And again, with the discussion at the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment, how could we use findings of fact or conditions to improve our process and allow it to happen? That's, I think, somewhere that I would like to see the discussion take place.
Okay, there are no lights, so I've been waiting patiently. I just have a few remarks because regarding the motion and the discussion. I think our staff across the board has been very professional. They have the background and the experience to address this. It is a draft document. It does need to be clearly and always marked that way. I've been to many, many meetings, which I agree is not the same as serving on the Planning Commission or the Board of Adjustment, but I do research on the issues. They do come to the board generally, except for the Board of Adjustment. And I've seen many, many discussions at these meetings over the years where they change the findings. They're very free to do that. The staff helps them draft a statement. I think Attorney Nuttall has described very clearly why there was a change in the direction of perhaps staff comments because of the state changes where the burden of proof is on the county. We have to prove that we did it right, and that's what our attorney is there for, is to help us prove that we did it right. So it has to be appropriate language. It has to be handled in a proper way, and that's, again, I've seen the attorney intervene at meetings to put people back on track for procedures and things like that. I've also been to many meetings where both the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment members asked for this information. Over the years, as has been described, the process has changed, and when there was little or no information, quite frankly, the Planning Commission's floundered, and staff was working kind of on the fly. And that worked, but the meetings were long, they were onerous, and probably unnecessarily so. And the final thing is that the ordinance does say we seek and use the advice before we make our decisions. So I think all of the boards, because of the training, and this board also, when we review these recommendations, I think we all take this very seriously regarding this discussion. I think it shows that. The only problem I have with the motion is that it has language that says we want a more neutral approach. I'm not sure what that means, and I'm not sure that's the way we want to structure the motion. But we do have a motion on the floor. As it's worded right now, I would vote against it, unless the maker of the motion would remove the language, a more neutral descriptor there for the approach. I think we could ask the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment to come up with suggestions or based on their experiences, whatever. And they have done that as they've been to the different meetings. But we can ask them again and have a further board discussion. In some ways, we're having a board discussion now, so we could actually go ahead and say everything's fine. But we have a motion on the floor that says, ask the Planning Commission to come up with a more neutral approach. Did you want the Board of Adjustment in there also, Commissioner Jacob, or just the Planning Commission?
Generally, these items go before the Planning Commission. I wouldn't see that as being a Board of Adjustment. It'd be great for them to weigh in on it, but
okay,
when we work on ordinance or comp plan issues, we usually go through the planning commission.
Okay, the examples brought forward today was heavily on the Board of Adjustment agenda, so I was just curious if we really only want, but that's what you want. The maker of the motion says the motion should be to ask the Planning Commission to come up with a more neutral approach. Is that where you're standing?
Yep.
The chair speaks last, Commissioner Ward.
I have some information to.
Okay.
Okay, what I was referring to is page 8 of our Winona County zoning ordinance, 2.3 standard requirements, and maybe we can fit this language in there. In their interpretation and application, the provisions of this ordinance shall be held to be the minimum requirements for the promotion of public health, safety, and welfare. Now, this says minimum. I don't know that's our, well, that was the intent. This is how this document was approved. So is it, maybe it's not more, what was the term Commissioner Jacob used, more neutral? Maybe it's just following our zoning ordinance, the minimum standards.
Right, and I don't know that we have fact that the documents are maximizing the risk that was expressed, but I'm not sure what that's based on. So, in essence, we do follow the zoning ordinance when we bring up the minimum requirements. They address only the issues, the criteria. They don't wander from that, so they're not adding anything to it. They focus on the issue and their background and experience and knowledge in the issue. So minimum requirements, I think, are expressed in our documents.
And that's open for interpretation, as I always said.
Right, and so is the
And
other
see,
opinion.
I've long thought that because land issues get to be very personal, people who own land take it very personal, are very proud of their land ownership and responsibilities. I've always thought that we should have our planning and zoning and Board of Adjustment done by another county, and then we'll do theirs. So we take away this, us and them. So that we could, in a way, somehow we could be more neutral. I'm opinionated. I think we're all opinionated, and we have strong feelings, and it comes from where we were, how we were raised and what our background is and everything. But I haven't got a lot of traction on that. But I think Houston County would like to, they'll do ours, and then we'll do theirs. And then
Open for discussion. Commissioner
Jacob?
Did you have your light?
Since I've got the flavor that the motion will fail, and Commissioner Kavesi, you've stated that you'd like to see the Board of Adjustment included. If I modified the motion to include the Board of Adjustment, would you be able to support it then?
I actually disagree with the more neutral approach language. I think if we just ask them for suggestions and recommendations regarding the process that's being used, I think we could get to the same point where we would then have another discussion on this issue. As I said, the other alternative is, we can consider this a discussion on the issue, but we'll see what happens with this motion. Commissioner Meyer.
Well, I made a note. I liked what Commissioner Ward said about a goal of improving our process, and was it outcomes? It might not have been outcomes, but that's what I wrote.
What's defendable in law and in a court, I guess, is what we have to.
I like that. In replacement of the neutral, or more neutral approach.
I would welcome you to amend the motion.
Okay. I'll do so then.
Can you please
state
it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I need your help to state the entire motion, please. So replacing the more neutral approach with improve our process and outcomes, I think. So what does it read like then?
Make a motion to ask Planning Commission to, your words.
Improve our process and outcomes.
To come up with suggestions or recommendations to improve our process and outcomes? Is that what the motion?
I think.
With recommendations.
Do you have that written down, Commissioner?
I have asked the Planning Commission to come up with recommendations to improve our process and outcomes. would we also add Board of Adjustment to that?
Yeah.
Since
Let's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's vote on the amendment first.
Oh, I think I need a, do I need a second?
Well, yeah, I'd
Can you
second it.
second it?
I think so.
Okay.
Or I can second it, depending.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. It's up for debate who is in which area. To add, to amend the current motion by adding Board of Adjustment and to replace more neutral approach with language that says to come up with recommendations to improve our process and outcomes. So let's vote on the amendment first. Any further discussion? Oh, Mr. Olson, Commissioner Olson.
The only thing that bothers me with that is, well, two things. Number one, this is a legal process, and we haven't had any weigh-in from that. Number two, I'm not sure that the outcomes, it says improve the process, but I don't know if that's going to improve the outcome or change the outcome. And I don't know if the outcome would be improved just because the process was changed. The outcome might be the same. And that's your interpretation of improve. If your interpretation is to improve the outcome, to get the outcome you want, then I just can't support that. I think the process has to play out, and the outcome will be what it will be. So I'm just stuck on that one word, so I'm not going to support it.
Okay. Commissioner Ward.
I think what a lot of people have expressed is the democratic process, that they, and it's their feelings, and I respect their feelings, is that the public was not heard, it was the lawyers that were heard. And so to bring it back to what the people want in Winona County, not necessarily what the legal, and legal always has to, part of their job is to craft it so that it protects against any laws. However we want to go. We want to, we want to change this. That's their job, is to protect us in a legal challenge. So I think however we can keep the democratic process and let the people be heard is very important. And hopefully that's part of the improved outcome and the improved process, is we don't want to take the people out of making the decision. How we do that?
Yeah, that would be my goal. That's front and center, not legal's conclusion being front and center.
Yeah, my only comment is that the two things. Legal isn't the final determinant. Legal coordinates with the planning department. So each has their own perspective on, with experience and scientific background, legal background, and they're putting it together to come up with so it's not really legal has ruled, it's a joint effort. The other thing is, the word outcome bothers me also because I don't know what the outcome is. Is the outcome that we have a better product for the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment to consider, or is the outcome that we have a different decision by those boards? And if it's the final decision is considered the outcome, I would have a problem with that. I could support the motion that if it just says we recommend to improve our process and stop right there. But with the word outcome in there not being very clear, I can see problems with that particular word. Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, so would you be comfortable with dropping the word outcome?
I would be.
Sure. I mean, if it moves this along
Yeah,
and it allows the people to have a discussion. I think that's one of the big goals.
Okay. Then I don't know. I'll move to
So then
amend again.
we can wordsmith and craft, but what's our intentions?
Yeah. Okay. Is there agreement on the maker of the motion to remove the word outcome? Yes. And there's agreement on the maker of the amendment to remove outcome. So now we have an amendment to the amendment.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Do we have a second for the?
I'll second.
Second amendment to remove outcomes. Okay. So that's motion to remove the word outcomes from the amendment by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Ward. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'd ask for your vote. All those in favor of changing the amendment to say we recommend we want the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission to bring us recommendations to improve our process. All those in favor of that change signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the amendment passes. Now let's vote on the main amendment, which says we're asking the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment, which was not included in that change. So let's vote on that amendment. That amendment was made by Commissioner Meyer and seconded by Commissioner Jacob. Okay. Any further discussion on including the Board of Adjustment in the recommendation process? Okay, I'd ask for your vote. We want to amend the motion to include the Board of Adjustment as part of the discussion or part of the process where they would then recommend to improve our process. All those in favor of signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Okay. The amendment passes. Now let's vote on the main motion. So the full motion made by Commissioner Jacob and seconded by Commissioner Ward and amended by this board says we ask the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment to come up with recommendations to improve our process. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'd ask for your vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes 4-1. Thank you. When I say we have robust discussions, we honestly do. So let's move on to item 6.2. This is on page 113. The title is Discuss the Feedlot Animal Unit Cap in the Zoning Ordinance. Commissioner Jacob.
Well, this was another item that I asked to have on the agenda. Certainly I feel as though the Dailies have been very willing to play by the rules through this whole process. They, went through the MPCA process and got the approvals there. Commissioner Ward and I brought up a few years ago about addressing the animal unit cap. At that time, I believe both Commissioner Olson and Commissioner Kavesi told the Dailies when they came to the podium that we don't need to look at the animal unit cap because you can get relief through the variance process. And they were very willing to, take your word at face value and go down that path. I think they've been very forthright and have done everything they can to play by the rules and follow the rules. One of the frustrations I'm having here is that when the animal unit cap was put in place in 1998, 1,500 was a huge number. And I remember as a young boy farming, and I was dairying at the time, the first farmer who was going to build a facility to exceed 100 cows. It was just beyond my wildest imagination that somebody was going to milk 100 cows. I mean, we were milking 25. Time progresses. We've got counties to the west of us, 8,000 cows. Our large dairy ban, in my opinion, has now become a medium and large dairy ban. 1,500 animal units is only 25% of what the Dailies are proposing in their application. So our ban has gone from prohibiting large dairies to now prohibiting large and medium dairies because 1,500 really that's a medium-sized dairy. I'd like our board to look at doing what is in harmony with our neighbors. I believe Wabasha and Olmsted County don't have animal unit caps at all. I think that the real concerns are what's going to happen to the groundwater and what's going to happen to our environment. As a farmer, I understand very well about nutrient management. And for us to prohibit animal units in our county makes less alfalfa, makes more row crop, makes more chemical fertilizer, more anhydrous ammonia, more urea to the plant. Manure is a very palatable organic fertilizer. And we need to make sure that we apply it properly and that we don't damage our groundwater. But sending our animals to other counties doesn't make for better environmental conditions. It makes for different forms of nitrogen being applied to our soil, which in my view are, I think we're being counterproductive if what we're trying to do is protect our environment. I would ask this board to give the Dalys some type of relief. I mean, what is their solution? They want to drive our economy. They have been very forthright in the rural community, literally bringing, I believe, every city and township recommendation that they support the Dalys operation, they support what the Dalys bring to our community. And I hear the people that want to protect the environment. I don't think we should take any steps that are going to damage our environment. It's my belief that sending these animals somewhere else damages our economy, is more damaging to our environment than having the alfalfa eating animals here. And lastly, I might suggest that when we put this large dairy ban in place in 1998, we've lost, from the chart I just read, half of our dairies. So how is the ban keeping the animals in the county? To me, these are our working girls. These dairy cows are our working girls, and it's my goal to keep them working for us in our county, driving our economy. We heard the letter, lengthy letter about the person who has multiple different government programs that they need. Well, where does that money come from? That comes from a robust economy. And taking huge numbers of our biggest economic driver in our county and telling them they have to go somewhere else, that doesn't support this person's need for being able to have those programs available. I feel like there's been a spotlight on this for the last 6 months because of this application. We could spend a lot of time doing a lot of studies, or it's on our agenda. We could remove the animal unit cap today.
Okay, I'm tempted to jump in. I don't see any lights.
Oh.
And I speak last,
Okay.
but
All right.
I know that can't be true.
So, Commissioner Jacob, what chart are you talking about where we lost half of our dairy?
Mm-hmm. It'd be the front page right here.
It's USDA Ag Census, and that goes back from 1998 to
Between 1997 and 2012, it went from 375 to 200, and if you extrapolated that out another 5 years, that would be more than half the farms, more than half the dairies have been
And
lost.
newest data hasn't been
Right.
published because of the government shutdown.
And I say that because
Yep.
I did print off
Yep.
going back to 1997, and I'll pass this around. I may have enough extra copies, but maybe not. Do you want one?
Sure, if you have one.
If not, I can provide it. So all right, so this looks at our neighboring counties. So Dodge, Fillmore, Goodhue, Houston, Mower, Olmsted, Rice, Wabasha, and us. Column 1 shows the cap if one exists in that county. So for example, Goodhue doesn't have a cap. The left side is the 1997 through 2012, number of cows, and then on the other side is the number of farms. And so using that, so I'm confused about that chart because looking at this, we had more cows than anybody else in 97, and we still do. And we lost only 641 cows, only 2%. And if you look at, for example, Goodhue that has no cap, they have lost almost 10,000 cows, and it would be like 35% of all of the cows.
But I think that chart's showing.
This is farms, not cows.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a difference.
Right.
It's you're really supporting my point.
No,
the cows have gone to fewer farms, so we still have the cows.
Right.
Luckily.
But if we tell dailies go somewhere else, we're going to lose 6,000 animals.
So if you look at the number of farms on the right-hand side, you will see that aside from Wabasha, we have the lowest rate of consolidation of any of these counties. So if you look at our neighboring counties, I mean, I'm not going to say that the animal unit cap helped, because I don't know that it did. My point would be that our neighbors who had higher caps or no caps, except for Wabasha, lost more farms than we did. And so I would argue that it's not a straight line. To me, at any rate, looking at this information, it's not a straight line to say that it's the animal unit cap. You're absolutely right, there's consolidation of farms, but there's a lot of factors. I don't necessarily know what all of those factors are, but I have tried to do a little research. So this is a farmer, this is from the Duluth paper, and this is a farmer in Becker County. Milk prices affect all farms, big or small, but Rotz, who's the farmer, he believes that smaller farms are at a greater financial disadvantage. Bigger producers benefit from bigger volume discounts on their suppliers, he said, and co-ops offer discounts to the larger producers since they don't have to make as many stops to fill their trucks up with milk. Smaller farms also face more hurdles with financing, as their tighter profit margins make it more difficult for them to qualify for bank loans. This puts expansion projects and major technology upgrades, which would allow the farms to grow out of the reach of small farmers, and large farmers just keep expanding. And there was a guy from Sleepy Eye.
So so what's your interpretation of that, Commissioner Meyer?
So,
is that a good thing or a bad thing?
So do I think consolidation of farms is a good thing? No. But there's other factors that have to do with the market, that have to do with the availability of producers. And there are financial aspects that are causing farm consolidation.
Right.
But that I don't see that the animal unit cap is a primary driver of that. And if you look at our consolidation rate compared to the counties around us, those that have no caps at all or higher caps, they're doing worse than we are. So I don't know that it's a straight line. That's my point. It's not a straight line to say that the solution to this problem is to simply raise the animal unit cap. Do I think that our farmers need help, and should we consider things to do to help them? We had a speaker, Mr. Ahrens, who was from Altura, who stood up and said kind of what I had been thinking, and that is, this is an issue. Farmers do need assistance, but the animal unit cap, well, I've heard how that might help a single farm, the biggest one in the county. I haven't heard how that helps small farmers. And I have had, you've gotten some of the same emails that I have, but I've also had small farmers call me and say, don't pass this, it will put me out of business. I would not stand up in public and say that because I don't want retribution, but you'll put me out of business if you raise the animal unit cap.
Okay, we have a speaking order. Commissioner Ward and then Commissioner Jacob.
Okay. Start off, been there, done that. Growing up, Commissioner Jacob, we milked 40 grade A Holsteins back in the day. My father was always proud to say it bought and paid for farms, it educated children, and it provided a good living. Today, it's a struggle. Most of my life, I've raised animals on a small scale. If you look at, Commissioner Jacob, and I did not have copies, and so there are some more charts and everything, how that all plays out. Today, could you do it? Very difficultly. And farm policy is it's at a global level, it's at a federal level. What Winona County can do to protect those small farmers it's limited. Our hands are limited. But to deny somebody that wants to grow and expand, I think that's contradictory. Yes, the small need help, but the federal farm program doesn't always help. Somebody made a point that the large farms get these subsidies and credits and everything, and I said, look hard and long at that list. About 10 years ago, I got a check from the federal government because it cost me more to shear my sheep than the wool was worth. They gave me a little check. So my name's on that list too. You know, if there's subsidies, you can do that. The small family farm, one of those charts had off-farm occupations. And it's unfortunate, the letter that Commissioner Kavesi wrote, how that young mother is having to work off the farm, the husband's having to work off the farm. The income just isn't there, and the expenses are extraordinary. But a tractor costs what a tractor costs. I mean, yes, the small farmer is usually going to buy something used, but the price of used equipment is proportional to new equipment. But putting a cap or taking the cap off, or in my opinion, does not really help the small farmer, because we have you talk about milk, and we were faced with this about a year and a half ago. Some of the small producers, and I got calls, their supplier was considering not picking up their milk because it costs a lot of money to drive those trucks around, pick up that smaller volume, and make, you know, for everybody to make profit on down the line and such. Luckily, they found a processor that was willing to do that. So there's, I hate to say it, there's niche markets, and you can try those. It is very difficult. But to deny one from getting bigger, I don't see the relationship to closing the door on small farmers. Small farmers, big farmers, they all have to be very creative in today's economy, figure out how you can make money, how you can save expenses. It's not getting any easier, and it probably won't. The number of cows, surprisingly, has pretty much stayed the same in Winona County, which is good. And Commissioner Jacob iterated the values of hay and grasses. If we take those cows out, we're going to see more row crops, and not necessarily, you know, to our advantage. We're looking at alternative crops. What can people grow and everything? But cows do a lot of good for the fertility of the land with their manure. And can it be managed? Of course it can be managed. I mean, that MPCA already, you know, went through all of that and determined how many acres. I was amazed at how many, even some small farmers thought, well, they're going to put all that manure on the same acres. No, you don't put it on. You have to have, it's all proportional. You can have 10 cows and be mismanaging the manure and the location and everything, or you can have 6,000 cows and you can be doing a good job. It all comes to, you know, management, how people are managing their operations. And again, with anybody needing a, you know, conditional use permit to expand, we have these criteria. You know, will not excessive burden. It will not change the character of the area. They're already in ag land. Applies innovative technology and distinctive management processes. You know, that's there. Avoid adjacent properties and natural features. We put things, you know, odor models, you know, you can't spread manure around sinkholes, things like that. Complies with the Winona County zoning ordinance, and I think the zoning ordinance says we protect and promote agriculture. The comp plan says that. Harmonious in accordance with goals and policies. Designated sites, you know, not to create traffic and congestion. You know, we've got all these criteria that and need to be applied uniformly across all of agriculture, really. So when you're under a small size, you don't have to follow. There isn't too many rules that you get asked to follow and are regulated with, but you get to a certain size, there's a lot more rules and regulations. So should we not have consistency in our regulation? Again, 10 cows standing in the middle of a, you know, stream or right next to a sinkhole, you know, is as bad as having a lot of cows in a different place. So it's proportional.
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. I have one correction. I believe you said the letter that Commissioner Kavesi wrote.
Oh, read.
Yes, clearly that's not my letter. I
Yes,
read
you read.
a letter. Okay, Commissioner Jacob, you had your light.
Sure. And so I'm looking at the chart that you
Yep.
gave us, Commissioner Meyer. So as the number, so 29,000, 28,000, 29,000, those are the current numbers?
Those are the cows.
Okay. Do you understand, or I'm sure you understand, that 6,000 is 20% of that number? I mean, we deny this. We're sending 20% of our business away.
I'm sorry, what,
The application is for roughly 6,000 cows.
oh, okay.
So, yes, we've been competitive. We make this decision to deny this ability to operate. We're 20% below everyone else in the area. 6,000 cows is a...
We already we have the most cows of any of the counties listed on here.
And we won't after we send 6,000 away. That's 20%.
You're assuming that that there's the potential for the Daly farm to move to another county, is what you're
Well,
saying?
I don't know what else they can do. And probably it's going to be one of these other counties, and then their number's going up 20%.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we have like 28,000 cows. We have the most cows of any county.
Yeah, well, I'm saying deny this economic opportunity, and we're not there anymore. And furthermore, one of our neighbors is. And then, you know, talking about a robust industry in general, what's best for the small farmer? Well, it takes businesses to support a 6,000 cow herd. If that business is there, it's there for the small farmer too. If we send this dairy away, there's a very good chance that that business can't support itself, and then it's not there for the small farmer either. In talking with neighbors, because I live up in the Plainview area, we've got a large creamery up there. I've heard discussions about AMPI not being able to continue in Rochester forever because of Destination Medical Center. That's prime real estate where AMPI is.
Yeah.
There's been discussion that a prime place for them to move to would be Altura, where the turkey plant used to be. If we send the message that we don't want large dairies, we're also sending the message you might as well find wherever the dairies are going and build your creamery there. Don't build it in Winona County. And you know, something else I've gotten from my constituents time and time again is if the rural commissioners had control of the city and we said you can only have a small grocery store, we want to promote small grocery stores, no Walmarts, no Hy-Vees, none of that, could you feel the would you feel the frustration if the rural community had that control over your economy?
I think probably a more analogous situation would be the existence of Walmart maybe putting some smaller stores out of business. And certainly there are people, both rural and urban, who are concerned about big box stores putting smaller stores out of business. So I mean, I do think it's a valid concern.
But if the rural community had the authority to make those decisions for the city, would that be a tough pill to swallow?
No, I don't really think that's
Because that's how the rural community feels with 3 city commissioners making the decision when all of the city councils and townships have weighed in that they want to see this expansion. I'm just using that as a parallel for you to understand my constituents' frustration.
And I appreciate that. I don't know that that's an analogous kind of example, but I take your point. That some of your constituents feel that they are not being represented in this particular argument. But I would also say that there are plenty of rural residents who feel that they're also not represented in a decision to remove the animal unit cap. And I've been hearing that conversation from farmers and other rural residents as well. So I don't know that I know an exact mix of who feels what way. I certainly take your point, and that there will be individuals who feel that way. Yeah.
In the democratic process, city councils and township boards are a good way for me as a rural commissioner to get, and I attend last night I attended Norton Township Board meeting, to get a feeling of where the rural community stands. And if the city councils are sending letters of support, the city of Lewiston, city of St. Charles, city of Rolling Stone, they're representing their citizens. They wouldn't collectively come to a conclusion and draft a letter from their elected body to our elected body, unless that's where a majority of the people were. I don't disagree that there aren't some. I mean, some people in the country don't want to see it, but I'm talking collectively as a whole.
And I don't know if that's true or not.
I have a comment too regarding at least one of the letters that we received copies of from the city of Lewiston. It was not signed by the full city council. So and I also, as Commissioner Meyer has expressed, have received many comments from people who did not want to go public with their names for different reasons, but they do not want the animal unit cap revised upward or removed. And they were very clear about that. So that's just two comments. Commissioner Ward.
I wasn't in the office at the time, but 1998, going back and trying to read meeting minutes. Now, they weren't taped or anything, but it's unfortunate that there was no science, no best management practices, no criteria or anything put on the table to come up with that number. The articles I've read is that the committee had recommended 25 at the time. It came to the county board, and there was somebody that made a motion that failed.
You said 2,500.
2,500, I believe. And the motion failed, and then it came in at, I think, you remember reading, I think 750, and that failed. And it was arbitrary and capricious to pick something in the middle, 1,500. So it had no relevance to, again, the science and the best management practices and things like that. So today, to sit here and say we're still going to stay with the 1,500, can you provide me with some understanding to the science, the best management practices, the practices of the particular applicant that are that fail to justify increasing the animal units? I mean, if we're not using science and best management practices now in 2019, Winona County's, not a progressive county as far as agriculture. And I think I've read that 67% of Winona County is farms. Well, it's unfortunate in my neighborhood, as I just look out my front door, there's a lot of row crops. And I have farmers in the area that would love to have manure applied versus going and buying commercial fertilizers and ingredients to produce a crop. So help me understand why 1,500 is still magic. Why it is proactive to maintain a 1,500 cap.
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, okay. So with respect to the economic side of it, which is the part that I really focused on so far, I don't know that the evidence that's been available through the farm census through 2012 really supports the idea that it's driven dairy away. I understand that the average size of the dairy farm has increased, and I understand that the bigger you go, the lower your per unit cost is. And so then that kind of makes economies of scale. So my undergrad degree was in economics, and when talking about the supply of milk, the idea is So this is from a farmer in Sleepy Eye, and what he says is it's a new world out there where there's too much milk. And while more milk translates to competition, more competition, processing plants are also struggling to keep up with the increase in raw product. Producers have got every right to increase the number of cows and to get more milk per cow, and that all adds up to more growth. But we really haven't had a significant amount of plant capacity increase. So the 2 points that I thought of were that if and the folks that have talked to me have talked about their feeling that they might not be able to sell their milk if there's more milk on the market in the county. And of course, in economics, and especially with a commodity, when the supply is increased, then the price tends to drop unless there's an offsetting increase in demand. So I am concerned still about small farmers and their health, and the folks that have reached out to me to talk about their concerns that they won't be able to make it. They're struggling already. And I'll just refer back to the chart that I was starting with that really shows that our consolidations through 2012, our loss of dairies, are lower than any of our surrounding counties, regardless of whether they do or do not have a cap. And I understood that the 2017 farm census was supposed to come out in February, but probably it didn't because of the government shutdown.
Right.
So I'd like to wait and see what those numbers look like. And the other thing I'd like to kind of gather a little more information on has to do with the average cost. So the U of M has been looking at the trends in dairy. Dairy sizes are going up. Yep, you're absolutely right. And they have a database where they track the average cost for a unit of milk. Only 20, we have 200, I think we have 205, to the farm census, we have like, back in 2012, we had 205 dairies. Only 23 of them have actually reported in the data set that the University of Minnesota Extension uses. So and that really shows that our small farms and our medium farms have got a pretty good price per unit, but I'm interested in having more economic data on the breakdown of our current farms. So what I'm saying is I really would like to have a little bit more information, and I'd like for the 2017 farm census to come out. And I think that I'm not adverse to the suggestion that we should have this conversation. I just think it's too soon to have this conversation. And I would be open, potentially thinking about it a little bit later in the year. So I think that's what I wanted to say about the economic side of it.
Okay, we have Commissioner Olson and Commissioner Ward.
One thing that hasn't been discussed, and I know it's before the EQB right now, that there is money out there to do a study, and especially a study of this region of the state with our karst. And, you know, we're talking about the economics, we're talking about the milk produced, we're talking about the price per milk, and I'm here drinking water. And we don't have any milk at the table.
I'll bring you some next time.
Yeah, there we go.
If I can't drink this water because of pollution, then I think we've failed everybody. We've failed the dairy industry, we've failed our citizens. I would really weigh in on waiting for that study to come in, if they so choose to do it. Certainly, Winona County can't finance an EIS study. The Dailies said that they couldn't or wouldn't finance an EIS study. If we fail to look at the impact of that, and I do appreciate Commissioner Jacob saying that this would produce a healthier water because of the plant mix. That makes sense. However, we could sit here and argue to raise it, to lower it, or to remove it. But we don't know how it affects this glass of water and the water of our rural residents. And I need to know that. And I wouldn't support changing anything until we do.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward?
Okay, well, Winona County has been a leader in dairy production for many years. By not taking action, we're in jeopardy of losing that. Our neighboring counties never have been as dominant in dairy as Winona County has. Now, exactly why, I'm not sure. Dodge County, you go over to Dodge, it's nice, flat, rich soils. It's a lot easier. It's a whole lot easier to grow corn and beans than it is to raise dairy cows. To be in animal agriculture today is a huge, people don't realize that it's 24/7, 365. You know why? I think was it Ford always had 4x4 on the back of their pickup trucks? That's a crop farmer truck. They work 4 months in the fall and 4 months in the spring, and they take the rest of the time off. That was why it was called a 4x4. When you're in animal agriculture, you have to be there every day and work hard 365. And so, for some reason, Winona County has always been a leader. If we don't take action and we sit and wait, we're at risk of losing that to some other areas in the state of Minnesota and outside the state of Minnesota. The study. It's been proposed. I think there's a meeting coming up in Red Wing in the end of the month here. I don't know that the legislature has approved funding because it's an enormous expense to do those studies right. And I don't know if they really have a time frame on them, how quick something like that can be done. But there is, if you look at some of the well data, now yes, we've improved how we drill our wells and maybe they're in deeper and such, but some of the facts about the quality of our water is that it is getting better. And part of the problem with the data is it probably doesn't go back far enough to know back in the 1930s when farming was much different, how it was. The data set doesn't go back far enough to really make a conclusion that it's that much better or that much worse. But the statistics from the public health is that it is getting better. And Commissioner Olson, you have the city of Winona to filter your water and hopefully take care of it. Individual wells and everything are our responsibility. And if you have a shallow well, maybe unfortunately you need to change that. You talk about economics though, property taxes. That's what Winona County government primarily works on, property taxes. Yes, we get some from the state and the Fed to run some of these programs, but our predominant revenue source is property taxes. So the big farmer pays property taxes, the little farmer pays the same rate property taxes. We have the same bill. It's all, based on, of course, it's based on value, and usually a small farmer doesn't have as good a land sometimes. It's not always, but my land, where I personally live, is pretty poor land, but I still pay a good portion to property taxes. So every time that we add a program, expand a service or something, it takes more property taxes. So we're kind of hypocritical in that we keep raising the levy, wanting more and more money to do our job. It's directly impacting the landowners. The small farmers more so because it's proportionally a bigger bill, and you can't spread it out, it's so much per acre. So I think we have to look at, when you talk economics, look at what we're doing as a board, raising our budget, raising our levy. We're going to talk about a jail. That's a huge, impact to rural residents, city residents, everybody. So be careful what, you wish for. If you're really looking out for the economics of the small guy, I don't know if we could ever come up with a graduated system. The small guy pays less than the big guy. I don't know if that's legal. We'd have to have legal check that out. I don't know that would be allowed. We could try.
Okay, excuse me, Commissioner Meyer and then Commissioner Ward.
Sure. So I think that Governor Walz put a couple.
Commissioner Jacobs. Sorry.
Jacob? Oh,
yes.
Okay. I think Walz put a couple million in his budget for it. So you're right. We'll have to see if it gets through the legislature. Yeah.
Yep.
And then I think the EQB is going to roll. However, I think because we are karst and because of the concerns that were expressed and the cost of such a study, then honestly, I think that's a great reason to wait so that we can have the scientific data that is really needed to know about the quality of water. And then so this idea that the quality of the water has improved, what are you thinking of with that?
There's been some recent
Oh, the MDA stuff?
Right.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, so there's been, and again, you have to be careful, you can make statistics
Yeah.
talk however you want. They're saying the wells tested, but
Nah.
a small portion of the wells were, were
yeah,
tested.
so I actually was interested in that because there was in 2016, there was testing. It was at the township level, and then they did it again in 2017. And I was interested in that. At the time, they were calling it the chemical fertilizer management plan, but they've changed it now to groundwater protections, I think is the name. But
Probably right.
so the Utica and Fremont townships, they had really high levels. It was the number of wells that were testing over the legal limit for nitrates. And I actually called when you look on there, I can't remember his name, but if you look on the website at the state level for that, I called the guy to talk to him about it. So what he said to me is that for accuracy, because of the testing was so high, that in 2017, when they tested again, they actually eliminated a bunch of the wells. And it was because if they were in proximity to there were issues where they didn't want to have the number be inflated. And then I think one of the townships, I'm getting Fremont and Utica confused now, which one was which, but one of them still tested like at 45%, but the other one had dropped a lot. And I don't think it was that the water quality improved. I think it's that they felt like this test eliminated a lot of wells where they were concerned that there might have been inflation. So.
And we could check that out.
Yeah. But you're right. The second round of testing showed less. But that was the groundwater. And so I've asked this question of hydrologists. I asked it of that guy when I was talking to him at the state level, just in terms of historic levels of nitrates. The general statement that the MPCA makes at the front of a bunch of reports is that if you look at parts of the state that don't have agriculture or urban development, there are very low levels of nitrates and phosphorus. If you look at the areas of the state where there's urban development, right, and so wastewater treatment plants, whatever, and that kind of runoff from urban landscapes, or if you look at the places where there's agriculture, then that pollution exists. I think you're right. Historically, they can't make a claim that it's been rising for 20 years. So I think that that's true. But the concern with the groundwater is that if we contaminate it, we will be screwed. I have told this story at the Planning Commission before. My brothers-in-law go to a game farm it's near Eureka, South Dakota, where that particular farmer gets it isn't that he doesn't have water, it's that they pipe in the water from the Missouri River, and they do that because the nitrate levels are so high and they, of course, they have very shallow, sandy aquifers there, so it's not karst topography, but the water quality is so poor he can't even feed that to his cows. If we should contaminate our aquifers, it would be a very bad thing. So I don't think any of us want that. I think Commissioner Olson's recommendation that let's try and have this study and get the results of it rather than paying for it ourselves. I would propose that waiting would be a good idea.
Commissioner Jacob.
I think we're all concerned about the environment. There's no doubt about that. Where your synopsis is flawed is that as a county government, we can tell dailies how much manure you're going to put on per acre. We can have control over how much nitrogen is applied. When we don't allow the dairy, the row crop farmer, we have no way to regulate how much anhydrous ammonia, how much urea. So by denying the ability to put alfalfa on our landscape and very palatable manure, which coincidentally as a small farmer, in 2018, I purchased manure to cover half of my farm. It's better plant food. It's organic. The problem that I have with waiting for a study is that Commissioner Ward and I brought this up years ago. It was kick the can down the road. If we were gonna do a study, that would have been a good time to have done it. Today we have a crisis in front of us, in my view. If we don't lift this ban today, what other option would Daly Farm have but to go to, in my view, one of the closest counties? Olmsted County is not very far down Highway 14, with from where they live to St. Charles is only a few miles. So we've got 4 neighbors that we're competing with: Goodhue, Houston, Olmsted, and Wabasha, all which have no animal unit cap. And we're saying no to a huge economic driver that's going to change these numbers that you're showing by 20%. It's going to put 20% more in a neighboring county, 20% less here, and now we're 40% at a disadvantage to those counties. So I know this is going to fail, but I'm going to make an effort. I'm going to make a motion that in order to stimulate our economic activity and move the daily application forward, I'm going to make a motion that we eliminate our animal unit cap.
And I'll second that.
In order to stimulate economic
Activity.
Thank you. I'm fast, but not that fast. Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Commissioner Olson.
You keep relating to these numbers. I don't, since the 6,000 number doesn't exist in these numbers, I don't think by saying you're going to remove 6,000 would change these numbers because it's not there in the first place. So you're making assumptions that the dailies will move. I've never heard that. I think that they would probably, I'm going to make the assumption they're going to continue to do business as they have been. And so I'm not going to support the motion.
Commissioner Ward.
I think when the 2017 numbers come out, you're going to see a dramatic decrease. I've seen again, refer to my neighborhood, there's several operations of a couple hundred cows that they're gone. They're not there anymore. The buildings are sitting empty. Maybe the best thing that can come out of this study is, and I've heard this for many years, is that the karst geography we should become a park, and we should all pay admission to live here. Maybe the state of Minnesota will come in and give me a good price for my land, and I'll leave. And you can make it a park. Well, then how is county government going to function? Because the state of Minnesota doesn't pay property tax, or pays a very low property tax. I think the economics of this are huge. This study, but again, we use our conditional use permit process. We can, as I've said before, you can regulate almost anything to death if you want to, if the applicant is willing to work with it. And I think the dailies have shown in their information and their study and their approach that they're willing to work with us to make it a pristine. And I've had many people that hadn't visited. Even County Attorney Asanaman went out and visited the dailies, and she was amazed at all the good things that they're doing. So when we take, and people read the newspaper. Had this conversation with a journalist not too long ago. How do you spell Winona? W-I-N-O-N-A. Winona. We're saying no to major clean environmental agriculture. I mean, that's going to tell anybody that's thinking about coming this way to, well, unless I got 10 cows and they all got a name, I'm not coming to Winona County to look to expand. And then to tell an existing Century Farm, that no, you're doing okay. Stay just the way you are, the same. Commissioner Olson, you have a little side business. Don't you need more business every year to cover your expenses and everything? You can't stay the same anymore. And we talk about milk production. Well, who drinks almond milk? Almonds don't make milk. Almond is juice, So part of that has been what everybody drinks. And I think the consumption of milk is starting to creep up in the world. And our milk doesn't stay in Winona County. Our milk is a worldwide commodity. And I think people want our protein, well, you know, a cow that doesn't milk or a steer, you know where that goes? That's, I hate to say it, that's McDonald's hamburgers. But people are wanting, and Holsteins are a good quality, I'm a beef person, so they tell me Holsteins are a good process, but our protein, you know, not every cow produces a female that's milk. There's a whole nother, you know, meat, you know, market that this revolves around. And the world is looking for our source of protein. So to say no, I think is just sending the wrong signal to not only people who read the Winona Daily News or the Post or the Rochester Post Bulletin, but it's sending a signal. We just had Governor Walz and Tina Smith. We had some devastating buildings collapse, some dairy buildings. I was really glad to see them come to Winona County to observe. And Tina Smith said, you know, agriculture is a very predominant part of our economics. And we're in Winona County, we're saying just almost the opposite, that no, we don't appreciate agriculture. So again, it's a signal we're sending the world, which I think is the wrong signal.
Thank you. Commissioner Meyer?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Ward. I don't want to send the message no. And really the point of what I was talking about with the economic information is that I'm not sure that there's a direct line to raising the animal unit cap and the health and viability of dairy as an industry in the county. That there certainly are issues, and to the extent that the county could explore any of the opportunities that we have to support dairy, especially those that are struggling because of being smaller. Our value statements in our comprehensive plan say local decisions supporting maintaining and sustaining the vitality of family farms, promoting policies that support our strong tradition of locally owned agricultural operations, and the administration of best management practices to consider soil, water, and economic viability, innovative practices, the promotion of local food systems, and the stewardship of land and its resources to retain the viability of agriculture for future generations. And I do want that for the county. I'm just not convinced that there is a direct line to raising the animal unit cap is going to solve the problem. Because our neighboring counties that don't have animal unit caps or have much higher caps aren't having any better luck than we are. So I would really like to have a conversation not about raising the animal unit cap, but a conversation about the whole array of things that can be done to preserve dairy and the number of dairy farms in the county. So I'm not interested, I can't support this motion as it's made. As a point of order, if we don't approve this motion today, when is the time that we can consider the topic again? Do we have a limit on that? Have I read that?
According to the rules, you can bring it up once a year.
Once a year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or if there's predominantly new information. Yeah.
Okay.
Something
Yeah.
substantial
Yeah.
changes.
Right,
Good to know.
right.
All right.
And we can
Okay.
discuss it next week.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacob?
So, to me, the crisis before Winona County today is it this board's intent to send 6,000 working girls somewhere else? And I'm going to ask the three city commissioners sitting here, short of my motion, do you offer the Daily Farms, very law-abiding, rules-following, dot every I, cross every T family, do you offer them any solution to helping drive our biggest economy? Any one of you?
Commissioner Olson?
So the motion on the table is to eliminate the animal unit cap, and you keep relating it to the Daily family, and I think that's unfair, because we could be talking hogs, we could be talking all kinds of different animals, but you relate this to the Dailies, and that's unfair to them, I believe, and it's unfair to us, because I have nothing against the Daly's operation or the Daly family. Again, I relate it to you want to make a wise outcome, and I believe that just saying this, and the Dalys could sell their operation, and we could be talking about some conglomerate that comes in here to run an operation. So you can't just say it's about them. It's about the entire county and looking at all animals. And I think if this was a huge hog operation, we'd be having a different discussion. The working girls are different in both scenarios. So that's why I'm not going to support it, and I'm not going to fall into a discussion relating to the Dalys either, because this isn't about them.
Okay, I was just about to take advantage of the last speaker.
But no, take it down to a personal level. We talk about 1,500 animal units. I raised sheep for many years. I could have had 15,000 sheep on my little 64-acre farm, and I would have been underneath the animal cap. 15,000, because the sheep is 0.1. I think my neighbors would have had issues with 15,000 sheep on my little acreage. So it's all in proportion. And I guess I can't apply for a feedlot permit in the city of Winona. I don't think they have a feedlot permit process. Can you have chickens and ducks and
10 chickens?
Can you have goats? Goats are known to be. I don't think you can have goats.
I'm not sure about goats.
Yeah, and chickens are, so you're limiting.
You can have 10, but no roosters.
Yeah, and I know there's different rules. So the city plays by different rules than the county does. But 15,000. My neighbor used to complain when I slept in on the weekends and didn't go out and feed him at 7 o'clock. I maybe waited till 8. He could hear him across the valley. Can you imagine what 15,000 sheep would sound like if I hadn't fed them? You probably heard it in the city of Winona.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jacob.
So, let me ask you this. Because I can tell the motion will fail, if I withdraw the motion and ask to set up...
I haven't spoken on it yet, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, are you saying you're going to support the motion?
I would like to speak to it, but I'm waiting for the last speaker opportunity, which never seems to happen.
We can't help ourselves, I'm sorry.
Excuse me. Okay.
Well, I haven't withdrawn the motion yet. You'll have your opportunity to support it.
Okay.
But if I withdraw the motion and ask to set up a committee to study the animal unit cap, then it's not, I guess, dormant for a year. So that would be another option, which was denied the last time I asked to have that looked into. My concern is that it doesn't help the application before us. We had an application for a variance. So, I mean,
before the Board of Adjustment.
My motion, if successfully passed, would solve the problem, and the Dalys could move forward. So, my alternative motion is not going to solve their problem. But I think it's, unless Commissioner Kavesi surprises me here and says that she's going to support the motion, I said I'd like to hear what Commissioner Kavesi has to say. Maybe she's going to support it. And
I've been waiting patiently. I think I have a constituency to represent. I did say I have had calls from people outside my direct district who were very concerned about the possibility of raising or removing the animal unit cap. Excuse me. I've followed all the discussion. I appreciate that we raised so many different points. I do not see that there's a direct relationship between an increase in row crops and an increase in dairy size. I think the row crops could increase, I think the alfalfa crops, the row crops will not, let me back up. It's been a long morning. I do not believe that the row crops will decrease with increased dairy operations. I believe that our alfalfa and our best management practices could be priorities across the board, and that they would increase on their own regardless of what happens to the dairy farms in our county. In other words, I don't believe that we would have less alfalfa and more row cropping. I do think that the economic information that's been discussed and the environmental information tells me to wait. I'm relating it to the board in 1978 when they decided to go forward with building the jail based on, I believe it was 1912 standards, and then in the following year, after the new jail was built, the Department of the state changed the standards, and our new jail was completely out of compliance from day one. I do not want to start a discussion and then have some information be presented, because there are studies that indicate that there is a connection. It's not been confirmed, but the Wisconsin study that just came out, we have maps. This map shows a 1-mile buffer around hydrological features within the Paleozoic Plateau, and Winona County has almost all blocked out if we have a 1-mile buffer around these features. So I come in on the side of you can't undo something that we would later find out would be harmful. I'm concerned about our groundwater and the number of wells that we have that are failing. Currently, I'm concerned about the comments that people have made to me, both in my district and from outside the district. So my inclination right now is to wait and gather further information. Winona County does not have the resources or the staff or the money to do the kind of study that the state is proposing. And yet it is a major piece of information for a lot of people that should be considered. I also do not believe that by saying in 2015 that the dailies could go through the variance procedure, that I was giving them no options. They did go through the variance procedure and they didn't like the outcome. This is not about the dailies. This is not about any one farm or any one farm's plans. This is about agriculture across the board in Winona County. And I think we have a number of concerns that point in the direction of allowing further study. And that's how I'm feeling right now. And I am supposed to be speaking last, but here it comes.
Well,
Commissioner Ward.
If I can share a good-sized dairy just recently decided they had to sell off some of their woodland to make things work, to cover some of their expenses. You're going to see more and more absentee. Of course, it doesn't matter because we still collect property taxes, and if they're absentee owners and it's recreation land, we actually collect more. But that does have an impact as to even like my little farm. I have half of its woods, so my tax bill will probably creep up just because our property taxes are based on sales. So these outside influences, the city of Minneapolis people and Chicago people that come in and buy up these little chunks of land, and farmers are going to be, they're going to sell off this marginal land. You can't keep paying taxes on something that you don't, use or need at a certain point. So you're going to see the burden, and you talk about trying to protect the small, farmer, the small landowner. It's just going to keep increasing because outside people are paying more than what the neighborhood would pay, and that so many sales dries up the rate. Mr. Hacken can conclude that. So, I mean, that's already happening, which is unfortunate that people feel they have to sell that off to keep their expenses going. And, so it just raise the tax levy and you're impacting everybody, not just the big, but you're proportionally hitting the small more so.
Okay. We have them. Oops, Commissioner Meyer.
Yes, thank you. All right.
No problem.
I just,
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer.
I have been losing sleep this week, waking up at night and really worried about this particular decision, about making the right decision, about the welfare of, because I know that it affects the welfare of a lot of people. So, to your question, I do support the Daly family. I want them to thrive. It doesn't follow through that then I think we should just raise the animal unit cap, because I see the issue as being broader and affecting a broader array of residents and many of them smaller farmers. I just want to go on record that I'm sorry, but I need to make the decisions that I need to make. I would support waiting until after this study is done, but then I would also not support just a committee to study the animal unit cap. Once we have more information from this, the study would be the one thing that I'm waiting for. I'd like to see this farm census get issued. Then I would rather see the focus be on how, in general, we could improve the conditions for dairy in the county, whether that's looking at EDA efforts, the niche marketing stuff that you talked about. What is the situation with milk processors? What are some of the other things that we could potentially do to support the dairy industry?
Okay, Commissioner Ward.
A question. This study is still an if. Okay, so what's our action if this study doesn't happen?
Then we would probably be able,
Discuss, we would move forward with an aggressive discussion?
Have the discussion, I would think.
Because we should know within months if this, quote, study is going to happen. Because it is in the budget, and the budget should be approved. Legislature's supposed to end in April.
I would agree with that. Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, so with everyone indicating how they vote, I will withdraw my motion so that this isn't off the table for another year.
Okay.
And then I'm going to ask for a recess, and then I might make another motion about what you just said you don't want a committee. But I'm going to ask for a recess.
Yeah, although the issue wasn't the committee. The issue was a single focus of the animal unit cap. I would want a broader topic of, in general, how to.
Hold that thought. And
Okay, so you're withdrawing the motion? What if I don't want to withdraw the second? I can withdraw the second. I can see the no votes, so let's have a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, we all agree
More
on
than
the break.
yes.
and the city of Winona having a municipal waste treatment plant that takes their human waste and spreads out in Winona County ag land. People manure. I mean, so what's the, I guess I would find very difficult to know what the definitive answer would be, Commissioner Olson. So I think a study committee could come up with a lot of positive things that could enhance applications.
Commissioner Meyer.
As I was saying before we went on break, that to me, just focus on the animal unit cap is too narrow. That I would prefer a committee that was going to look at how we could support ag more in general. And then, Commissioner Ward, when I was at the township officers meeting, is it Everett? Is his last name Rolfing?
Yes.
Yeah, he was talking about the spreading of human waste on ag land. So, if the township officers were interested in having a presentation on how the wastewater treatment plant worked, I've been on a tour. It's actually pretty fascinating. Of course, they're highly regulated, and the water
MPCA,
and the water goes through several series where the active biologic stuff is kind of digested, but then they also have a methane digester there, so they burn off the gases that are produced, and so there is a final product.
Right.
It's true.
Once you spread it in the city of Winona.
There is a final product, but it's not just crap. I mean,
put it out on the parkland. Maybe the golf course would like that.
In Milwaukee, they sell it. What's it called? It's got a special Milagro something.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
sure.
So it's not really a true thing to say, but the point was if the township officers meeting were ever interested in actually learning what that process is and how the human waste is treated, it might be a fascinating thing to learn about.
Well, maybe 25,000 people in the city of Winona is enough. Maybe we can only treat so much.
Oh, it's highly regulated, and someone monitors it 24 hours a day.
I know they do.
Takes
and
sampling.
it's MPCA, which is the same agency that regulates animal agriculture. Same agency. So in one respect, they're seen as efficient and good at what they do, but then when it comes to animal agriculture, the MPCA is questioned. So we have a motion.
Okay, and there are no lights. At this point, I believe a committee to, what's the motion say, to review the animal unit cap would be disruptive. And not only have conditions changed since 1998 for farmers, but science has changed since 1998. We have additional information, but we don't have complete information, and a major piece is the effect of the karst geography or geology that we have. And the MPCA actually requested a karst study on 3 different animal unit proposals that came before them for the EAWs. So this is a regional issue. It is being recognized and hopefully will be addressed. We have the Wisconsin study that is beginning to tie county wells with animal waste and the distance involved, the correlation with the distance involved between those operations. We have the Root River Edge of Field Monitor information that's been going on for about 10 years, so I think there's some promising information to come out of there. But actually, I'm not sure what the committee would discuss right now because the big piece, the economic information and the karst study has not been collected. Our county, we would be talking about lots of dollars and also staff time, which is also lots of dollars. I'm not sure that we have the resources to do this kind of study. Last week when we had our team building exercises, we did talk about how democracy with a small d collects information from a variety of resources, discusses it, and considers it before getting what's hopefully a wise outcome. I think we've done a good piece of that. I would like to focus on supporting agriculture and also the groundwater health. So to me, that's my long-range outcomes that I would like to see information on. And I think when we have more information, we will be closer to making those kinds of decisions. So at this point, I'm not in favor of establishing a committee.
Okay, I call the question.
Okay. Do we vote on a call to question?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Thank you. My Robert's Rules is rusty. All those in favor of calling the question, which would end the debate, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
Call the question, yes, aye, yes.
Okay, so
On the motion.
the question has been called and it's unanimous. Okay, so let's have a vote on the motion. And again, it's proposed by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Ward. And the motion says to set up a committee to review the animal unit cap. So all those, is there any further, no further discussion. We've called the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Aye.
Aye. Nay, okay. So the motion fails. 3-2. Okay. I was going to call for a break after this, but we just took a break, so let's press on. Item 6.3, which is on page 114 of our agenda, discuss family night on the farm.
Okay, and to make this real short and sweet, hopefully. The Chamber of Commerce has held this event for us for a number of years and done an exemplary job promoting agriculture by bringing the public out to ag land and showcasing some of our true local dairy farmers and everything. We've kind of made them, I put it bluntly, we've made them jump through a lot of hoops. And the list I just provided you is an exemplary, it's probably more than even our ordinance regulating large assemblies. So if you look down that list, apply for secure appropriate food permit, alert and coordinate county sheriff for, signs, provide encourage off-street parking, work with a nonprofit for wheelchair, provide free shuttle service, provide handicap parking, seek input from the county engineer, arrange on-site first aid EMT, provide sufficient number of porta potties, provide hand washing, alert and coordinate the local fire responders, confirm sufficient insurance, name the family host and liability, identify and fence off areas that could be risky, arrange for waste management, recycling, and coordinate and arrange law enforcement presence. With these as being the standards that the Chamber of Commerce has followed for a number of years, I would like to move that we exempt the Chamber of Commerce, the Winona Area Chamber of Commerce, as in our our ordinance regulating large assemblies in Winona County, page 2. This ordinance shall not apply to, and I would want to add the family night on the farm. It says Pickwick Mill Days, Wilson Days, Ridgeway Days, and events held at Farmers Community Park.
County Fair is on there too, I think.
Oh, County Fair, yes. I'm sorry, yes.
All right.
So I would like to move that we exempt them from this ordinance. We hold them to the standards that they've imposed on themselves of running a top-notch event, and we give them permission.
I'll second the motion.
So you're saying that we exempt them from that list, basically, but keep the
No,
others
put them
on the list?
that list. We add them to the exempt.
We put them on the exemption
Okay.
list.
Administrator Fritz, you had your light.
Yeah, I was just going to, point of information, we had scheduled a working session, or at least internally, for April 9th for the large assembly permit. I just wanted everybody to know that planning has been working toward that goal over the course of the year to look at that particular permit. It doesn't, this discussion today is on family night on the farm. I don't want to confuse the two, but at the same time, I just wanted to make you aware that there was an upcoming session on that.
Commissioner Olson.
I see Kay in the audience. Could you weigh in on this a little bit? What regulations at your staff level, how would that affect your staff?
So you're saying what regulations are affected by this change?
Right.
Yes.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Olson and Commissioners,
I guess it's just one.
the large assembly permit is dated, and because of the nature of putting together the family night on the farm and the huge effort and collaborative it is for the chamber, farms, and to coordinate everything for health, safety, and welfare, the regulation in the large assembly permit, the way it's written right now, requires a conditional use permit, which is now called the conditional use / interim use permit. That may or may not be what staff would recommend in a work session or in a revision. We believe that is adding too much to the timetable and the length of time to get through the process for family night on the farm, or indeed any other large assembly groups, such as sometimes the educational events of the SWCD, which run over 500 people as well. And there's some other things that are archaic in that ordinance too, and Administrator Fritz has referred to the idea of either having a work session on it, because it is a county-wide ordinance, not and except in the towns, but there is a requirement for conditional use in it, so it does affect the zoning ordinance and the planning commission. I would stand up and recommend removal of the conditional use, interim use, and having a hearing at a county board level so that it still does open up an opportunity, but a fast-tracked opportunity for somebody that wants to speak for or against any kind of large assembly taking place. Family Night on the Farm, of course, has a stellar reputation and wouldn't receive the same level of scrutiny, only the same boxes to check for safety, because unless I'm missing something, lukewarm food being served at even a stellar event is a bad thing. And so having the boxes to check in terms of Dave Kramer making sure that, the two entrances to a township road are, in observance. Since I provided that service for Family Night on the Farm last year and the year before by running around the application to the appropriate folks, including Wilson Township, and contacting Josh Murphy, the fire official for Wilson Township last year, to expedite matters, having just a little more straightforward process to fast track it, as well as still making sure that health and safety and the things that are not optional from the state about food handling, they know all that. Not everybody that might put a festival together knows that, so we want to have consistency. So I guess a lot of the recommendation from the department just for this season would be to accept the Family Night on the Farm consideration for waiving Section 2B requiring a CUP for large assembly relating to the 2019 event, because the board can do that, and then scheduling a work session if you would like, or having staff and legal continue to revise the large assembly permit. So that doesn't relate to exempting them as much as fast tracking them, but that's the department's input. Thank you very much.
Yes, Commissioner Ryder.
Okay, just questions. Kate, I like help, please, because I need to catch up here on what's going on. All right, so you're suggesting that we have a conversation about Marcia's Commissioner Ward's request, which would be to add them to the list of exemptions, but that in order to let that happen in a kind of a more normal process, that we would be able to waive the requirement for what this year? The 2B requirement for what?
To read it, it states a CUP shall be obtained prior to applying for a large assembly permit, but at the beginning of Section 2, it allows the county board to waive any requirements contained in the section as long as you all are fully satisfied that such reduction or waiver will not be detrimental to the public nor diminish in any way the safety or well-being of the general public and those attending such assembly. That is the highlighted and bold section in the middle part of page 2. We don't believe that any waiver this year of the CUP will in any way be detrimental to the public or diminish the safety. The permit itself has a checklist, and as we transition into whatever the large assembly permit's going to look like in terms of what the Planning Commission ends up wanting and then the board, wants or modifies, then we will revise the permit accordingly.
So your recommendation would be for us today to just waive the requirement and then let the potential exclusion take its regular course?
I guess I'm not going to speak to the exclusion because I feel like the permit and the boxes that need checking in the permit are pretty normal things. I mean, fire and emergency management do need to be notified. Whether it's me running around and expediting it or the Chambers Committee doing it, I think that's been pretty consistent the last couple of years. It's not up to me to decide whether the whole thing is waived. From the department standpoint, I am suggesting for 2019 that the board waive the CUP IUP requirement and therefore help Family Night on the Farm fast track and not get trapped into needing to go to the Planning Commission, which then goes to the board. And if they have a site, there could be a board hearing for it. So I guess trying to have a bias for action from the departmental standpoint to kind of speed up the process and eliminate for 2019 the CUP, pending possible elimination of the CUP IUP language, depending on the recommendation of how it shakes out going through the Planning Commission and the board.
Okay.
I have a question.
I have some more.
Okay,
Maybe it'll
go
be the
ahead.
ones that you had.
Go ahead, Pam.
Okay, so I am unfamiliar with the history of why the county fair and the other events are, like, why they're excluded. That was one question. And then the other question is, well, I want to know the first one. Do we know why are they excluded?
I don't remember
The
discussion. I guess I don't remember, but and Kay wasn't
I'd have to
here.
ask Eric Johnson, our zoning administrator, that goes back before my tenure here. My understanding was that several of them were exempted because there were hard structures that these events were taking place in, and that the location did not change from year to year, unlike Family Night on the Farm or some of the events that take place in the parks, which are currently not covered. So right now, if Family Night on the Farm took place at Farmers Park, they wouldn't need anything, basically.
Farmers Park.
And that makes just no sense at all.
Absolutely.
So we want to just kind of make it streamlined, make it logical, and not violate any state statutes in the process,
Sure.
is the department's goal.
Commissioner Ward, did you suggest that we would just change the zoning ordinance like today,
Yes.
here today? Can we do that?
Yes, it's our, it's
It's an ordinance.
An
but
ordinance.
You do have to.
And we
you
have
have to
the.
have a public hearing.
Yeah, we must have a public hearing,
Okay.
so.
Well, I would move that we exempt them.
Yeah.
And we hold, what's our next meeting? Have a public hearing.
Right.
To again, holding the chamber to their own self-imposed rules, and we can put this in the record. And Della Schmidt has taken her time and energy to sit through our long discussion. I mean, they have, the track record is that it is an exemplary event.
I totally support just doing the waiver. What I think I heard, maybe that it would be possible for us to do a fast track at our next meeting, have a public hearing. I don't know. No, she's shaking her head.
Yeah,
no.
just exempt them and have a public hearing. I think what's the process, attorneys? Nuttleman? You're all about process.
There's a couple of different things that you're talking about, a couple of different processes. The one process that's already been started is the process of completely overhauling the large assembly ordinance, which might alleviate the concerns that are being raised. The other process is the process for exempting the 2019 Family Night on the Farm and giving them that waiver for this year. And then the third process would be the process to amend the zoning ordinance just to add the Chamber of Commerce and the Family Night on the Farm to the list. So which process would you be talking
The
about?
list, the last one, just adding them to the list. But if they're going to, if we're going to review this and everything, that's all subject to change.
Correct.
Okay, so I would say let's put them on the list, and if this doesn't get changed, which we know Planning Department has a lot of things to do, and I don't know if the large assembly in Winona County is a high priority. Obviously, somebody thought to put a work session on it, but I'm just saying, let's just let the chamber do their thing. With, again, they're not circumventing any of the standards that we already have in all of this, ordinance.
So would you be open, I'm supporting the waiver, with the
Yep.
waiver. I think I'd probably prefer that if there was already a process scheduled to revamp it, that we should just let that happen.
But did the chamber event trigger this? I mean, I don't know that we got anybody else applying for large. This came from when a guy wanted to do a rock concert down in Wiscoy Valley. Is basically where it came from, and it was kind of a Woodstock event, with little to no, thought about public safety and health and a lot of things. So it is an old. It came in 2002? Is that what it said?
Well, although I do see the value of it. Let's say that whatever event happened to happen in Wiscoy Valley, and there was a 7-inch rainstorm that day.
That was one of the discussions.
Yeah, that way, I see the value of the ordinance. I do.
Commissioner Jacob.
Well, first of all, I feel like I dropped the ball because Kyle Rupert brought this to me 5 years ago, and we dealt with it then. I thought it was a handled issue, but now each year it gets redredged, and so now it's been languishing for 5 years or more. My concern with the language here is exempt for 2019. I'd like to see this permanently resolved and just have them on this exempt list, and whatever we're going to do with our large gathering ordinance, we should get this resolved for the Chamber of Commerce once and for all. And if we can exempt the Winona County Fair, we can certainly exempt Family Night on the Farm. So that's the process I'd like to follow.
Thank you. I have a comment, though. If we exempt it relating to the 2019 event, we can also still consider it as part of the large gathering ordinance when we review that in April.
Madam Chair, I think that in terms of the timeline for noticing and for getting it before the Planning Commission and for the board, whether it is a work session first or we bring language to the Planning Commission directly based on input and things that I'm hearing here, I would recommend, because the large assembly permit is in existence now, and in order to fast track Family Night on the Farm without needing ordinance revisions, because there won't be time, that this board, the way I'm reading it, Assistant County Attorney Nuttall, that the CUP could be waived by the board for this year based on Section 2B.
That's what it appears.
To get that waiver in place, I think would be desirable so that their process is not slowed down by our requirements for noticing and for the preparation of language that's acceptable to the Planning Commission and the board. And then the discussion can take place about what does exempting mean? Was it intended for physical structures or meetings that take place on various locations? The reputation of the committee, the chamber, the quality of the event is certainly not a factor in any recommendations this department is going to make, because that's exemplary. We're just trying to unsnarl it just a little bit, but still have the health, safety, and welfare that this organization or this event has evidenced in the past continue, but be consistent and unsnarl some of the existing problems with the large assembly and then the associated permit. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a speaking order, Commissioner Ward and then Commissioner Meyer.
Again, referencing Commissioner Jacobs, we've worked on this for about at least 5 years, trying to just make this flawless and make it work. And I hate to say it, but every planning commission or any planning director comes in seems to micromanage and change the thought process. And last year it got very complicated timing-wise because we required a CUP, then it was in Wilson Township, and I'm not sure where you're thinking the event will be this year, but then we got Wilson Township, we raised their hackles, that the chamber had to spend more money for more fees and go to more meetings and everything. Again, I want to make it simple and fast if you want to change the ordinance and everything, but I want to add them to the exempt list moving forward. With again, I'm using the criteria that Ms. Della Schmidt provided, and you all have a copy of, and that would go in their file.
Commissioner Meyer, thank you. Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'd like to maybe do it in multiple steps. I'm not really sure. I'd like to immediately. I mean, today I want to be sure that we exempt them from the conditional use permit. And then
But just 1 year?
No, I'm totally
okay.
supportive of,
Okay.
yeah, making it be a thing that doesn't have to be
We have
repetitive.
the authority as a board to do that right now.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I read it.
So the exemption, I think, the waiver, I think, yeah, we can do that. I guess I thought I heard that if we want to change the zoning ordinance, we have to have a public hearing, and we can't do that today.
No, so we're not.
Right. So
That's a different issue.
Yeah, so I'd love to see that we just do the waiver today, and then,
Yeah,
the other thing later.
I think that's the motion that's on the table, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Put 'em
I
on
did just want to say that I do support our planning director. I think she's doing a great job. And I think that she does try to bring us solutions to the things that we ask for.
Mr. Fritz.
I just want a question for clarification. Kay, you mentioned that the zoning, this particular ordinance, the large assembly permit ordinance, would have to go back to the plan commission?
Well, at this point, there is a CUP, IUP requirement, so the elimination of that would.
That requirement is in the large assembly ordinance,
Correct.
correct? It's
Correct.
not in the zoning ordinance.
No, it isn't,
So
but
the-
the
so
zoning
the-
ordinance piece is required, so that's where my thought process was. That
Right. What I'm trying to understand is because originally we had talked about bringing this to a working session, and the reason was it's a standalone ordinance. It's not a zoning ordinance. It's not part of the zoning ordinance, although it references the zoning ordinance.
Right.
The board, to be clear, and maybe Steph needs to jump in here, but the fact is they could remove the requirement for the CUP from the large assembly ordinance with a simple public hearing. They don't have to go to the plan commission for that.
Well, if legal concurs with that representation, it certainly would simplify matters. The fact that a CUP, IUP is currently required puts it through the planning commission, which is where I was going with it.
I'm just saying, I want to make sure the board understands the process, not the exemption of under section 2 today.
Right.
That, as Chris stated, that's exactly right. What I'm talking about is as they go forward, whether I don't want everybody to believe it needs to go to the plan commission unless it really does. Right. So.
Okay.
Commissioner Ward.
Okay. As I remember, it's been a while ago, why this came about, it really was that music fest down in Wiskoy Valley. And looking at, trying to remember, that probably does need a conditional use permit because it was a use of land, it was, traffic, we had a stream running through there, so we had DNR permitting, so.
I'm not saying you have to exempt it, I'm just saying the process is the county board can leave it in there, require a CUP.
Okay.
It's just not tied to the zoning ordinance.
Zoning ordinance.
So it doesn't have to go through the plan commission, only the zoning
I
ordinance has to go to the plan
misunderstood that you just need a public
commission.
hearing, and I
No.
think it probably
To
does.
change the large assembly ordinance, you just need a public hearing.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
And noticing to other counties.
Noticing and all the stuff that goes with a public hearing.
Yeah, I have a question. The difference, if it's removed from the CUP requirement, the difference is the discussion at the planning commission. So by removing it, by waiving it from that requirement, we are saying we don't need that discussion, so.
For the chamber,
Right.
for family night on the farm.
Right, for this one event.
I have one other point of clarification, though.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Kay, even though they exempt it, if they were to exempt it from the conditional use permit, you're saying all the other parts of the ordinance would apply?
Correct.
Okay, so there are other things in the ordinance that we've indicated that are need a revision. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so, but they would still have to comply with all of those this year?
That's correct. And a lot of the language in the large assembly permit applies to things other than family night on the farm, events in parks and such as well.
But things like requiring a paramedic at a certain level of attendees, things like that would all, you'd be expecting them to apply to all those things.
Correct.
Wait, now you're going away from my intentions of exempting them.
Yeah, I
If
know.
they,
But that
you're
section
putting,
doesn't-
you're micromanaging this
That
back
section does,
to.
I just want to make sure you're on the right path. That exemption of the CUP does not eliminate the other requirements.
I think he wants to make sure you know that.
I think the discussion I had that I also wanted to raise is that this list of requirements, for lack of a better word, many deal with public safety, many deal with public health, a couple are legal, handicapped issues and insurance. They are important. So in the motion, if we exempt them from the CUP, I don't know if we need language to
I
say
said with
these
these
will be.
these criteria that
So you
they've
want that
provided.
added to the
Yeah,
motion?
oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because they've been doing that and they're willing to do that and it does protect health, safety and general welfare.
Right, yeah.
But now you're saying
No,
that
I'm-
we still have, the family
No.
night front has to come get
No, I'm saying
permission
if you
from
include it in the
planning?
motion, okay,
Yeah,
then you're telling, I want to make sure the staff is clear
Yep.
that we're taking that instead of what's in the ordinance.
Okay, I
Now,
want
the question,
this.
the legal is, does the county board have the authority to do that?
Says that Section 2 allows the county board to waive any requirements contained in this section as long as they are fully satisfied that such reduction or waiver will not be detrimental to the public nor diminish in any way the safety or well-being of the general public of those attending.
That's only section 2. So anything else in the ordinance that isn't in section 2?
I'm not as familiar with the large assembly ordinance as I am with the
let's
zoning
pass
ordinance.
it and if we got consequences to deal with it, we'll deal with it later.
I just want to make sure everybody understands what they're passing. That's all I'm trying to do.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'll buy you a ticket.
I'm not sure that anything to do with health, safety, and welfare that may not be managed by the county can be waived in any way. Health screening or health impacts are not supervised by the county. And as far as, quote, permission from my department, we just have a permit with boxes to check that include highway, making sure that the township fire, making sure that emergency management, which is a different department also, are contacted. By facilitating it the last 2 years, I was representing Family Night in the Farm to streamline things, but it would be helpful for the department if a committee member were to do that, just in the event that there are any questions that are raised.
Member from Family Night on the Farm
Right.
Committee?
It could be.
Okay.
They have a committee. Chamber has a committee.
No, I'm not asking about whether or not they have a committee, but last year, if questions arose, if I expedite by going to Dave Kramer and saying, here's where the farm is, that's what I did last year to make sure that things were streamlined. But it would be preferable from the department standpoint if someone from the committee could do it in case there's questions that crop up. Because
What committee are you referring to? Who's this committee? The chamber committee or some internal?
any petitioners.
Organization.
Yeah, organization, whether Family Night on the Farm, a committee member, or if Della goes, or whomever. Or I can go along.
They're more than willing to take care of this, correct, Della? Okay.
Yeah.
What do you do with the county fair right now? That's on the exempt list.
That's a hard structure
Yeah.
building, so.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
So that committee takes care of what they take care of because they're
We're just
exempt.
going to handle it the same way we handle.
Yeah, we have a speaking order.
Yeah.
Commissioner Meyer was on a speaking
The
order.
permit that you referred to, just now, you were talking about the permit and then the committee. The permit with the checkboxes is not the conditional or, is not a CUPI. It's a different permit.
No, it's not a different permit, it's the large assembly permit.
It's a large assembly permit.
So there's statute or ordinances, and then there are permits that are generated from that.
And so what you're saying is that some of the items on the large assembly permit are not regulated by the county, even though they need to be checked off, and you can't just exempt them because.
Correct, because it's not in
like
our.
a higher, it's like state
Right.
law or federal or whatever in the heck.
Many of the boxes that get checked on the large assembly permit are just acting as reminders to, okay, make sure that these folks get a call, make sure these folks get a call, make sure that you review the state statutes and so on. They're not meant to add layers. And and it's not something that we administer as far as the state either. It's just dot your i's and have a great, safe event. I'll see you there.
Yeah, okay, so I call a question.
All right, let's vote on the call to question. We did have Commissioner Jacob waiting to.
I said what I need to say.
Okay. All right, we have a motion to call the question and end the debate on the family night on the farm. All those in favor of ending the debate signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Nay.
Yeah, okay, nay.
I still have some questions.
Did it pass? 3-2? I didn't.
Takes four.
Yeah, okay, didn't.
No.
Okay, okay.
I want to give the waiver, but I kind of would like to, well, I'm unclear. So I'm unclear after the, kind of the end of the conversation that the exemption, like that the fair has, is an exemption from the CUP, not from the large assembly permit. Right? Is that
No,
right?
no, it is, no, it's an exemption, the way I read
Exemption
it.
from
It- From
both.
both.
It's from everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then the question was if this is an issue for us legally. And was the answer, we're not sure yet?
Today, you could do the exemption from the CUP IUP. You could not do the complete exemption like the county fair.
Because?
Because it requires a public hearing.
Because it requires a public hearing. Okay.
So let's amend the motion to exempt them, and let's schedule a public hearing. What is our next meeting? March, whatever it is. Okay.
Okay.
And schedule the public hearing. That would allow them to exempt from the large assembly. Correct? Is that what you're saying?
Maybe.
Ms.
Madam
Nuttall?
Chair.
Yes. Sorry. I'm paying attention.
Staff in noticing will not permit the March 26th meeting to be the meeting for this to come before the board, and might I respectfully recommend the April 9th meeting, which would be as much as we could expedite.
Okay.
Thank you.
How many days do you need? How many days do we need?
That's my recommendation, Commissioner, for what is needed for the department.
Yeah, it's not just the permitting, it's what they need to get ready.
I don't think there's a timeline for the.
We're not asking, we're not asking anything to get ready. We're just going to hold a public.
I think she's saying we can still vote on the waiver tonight, but on changing the ordinance, that requires a public hearing, and she would suggest that we do that at the April 9th meeting because we'll have a discussion on the full large gathering ordinance or permit. Excuse
My
me.
intent is to.
There's a speaking order, and
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I think I've been in line for a long time.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to ask Della Schmidt to come up and,
Mr. Fritz is in line also.
could I ask Della, could you come up and give your input on this?
Good morning, Board of Commissioners. Sorry. Good afternoon. Thank you for the consideration of this. The Family Night on the Farm event has been a collaborative partnership for over 40 years between the Winona Chamber, the agriculture community, and Winona County. Up until recently, Winona County has been extremely helpful and has been very much a partner in putting on this event. This document, this large gathering ordinance, as Commissioner Ward has pointed out, was put into place at a point in history that the county was trying to respond to an idea that was being floated out there. And at no point in time was that document written with an eye toward the Family Night on the Farm event. I would encourage you to consider that it should have been exempted from day one with the other that are listed on there. The reason that this document is so troubling is because it does put the county staff at a disadvantage, and I do understand that, even while I will also say I am frustrated by it, because it has never been the problem that it has evolved into in the last couple of years in the previous. We've never gone before Planning Commission, we've never had public hearings, we've never had all this rigmarole. We put on a quality of event because we are the Chamber of Commerce, and our primary responsibility, first and foremost, is to that organization. So it behooves us to put on an event that, to use the director's comment, checks all the boxes, because we have to watch out for the financial exposure to this organization, meaning we don't want any lawsuits. So of course we're going to put on an event that is safe and is healthy. And because there is food there, we do go through the Minnesota Department of Health. We follow all the criteria and the requirements through that agency in order to provide the food service and everything else. This ordinance was never, or this conditional use permit process, this large gathering, was never written with this kind of event in mind. And the problem is that the planning department staff, trying to do a good job and trying to read, these are the words on the sheet of paper, that is their job, is to then enforce what has been put into place, but they weren't here for all the history. And so it's just become a struggle rather than the celebration it's intended to be. And all that we're asking for is some consideration to go back into a partnership with Winona County. And frankly, our ag community needs some sign that agriculture is something to be celebrated and honored and protected in this county. And this is a small way to do that. We have a difficult time every year finding somebody to host Family Night on the Farm because they see it as increasingly difficult to do so. So we're just asking for a simple exemption. We've provided to you a document that shows you what we do internally. We will always do, we will continue to do, because it's good business practice and appropriate business practice for the organization. So if you want to hold us to that list of standards, that's great, because that's our normal operating business. So thank you for your consideration, and look forward to whatever your judgment might be.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone waiting to speak? Okay, I have several options on the motion down on my paper. I'm not sure if I should ask someone official to read what they have as the motion, or give you what I have. I'll give you what I have. One motion was discussed to exempt the Chamber of Commerce or the Family Night on the Farm from the CUP process, but include the list of requirements that were stated on this paper. A separate discussion was to add the Family Night on the Farm to the list of waivered events, which would require a change of ordinance, which has different procedures. That's basically what we're looking at?
You would have to motion to hold a public hearing in
Right.
consideration of changes to the large assembly ordinance.
But the first part of the motion that says exempt the Chamber of Commerce from or the Family Night on the Farm from the CUP process, but include this list of requirements,
I'm not
is
certain.
possible to handle right now. Is that?
I'm not certain you can add that list of requirements, because the ordinance doesn't give the board the authority to exempt anything except the CUP.
Yeah, but I read it differently. You know, again, it's all a matter of interpretation.
I'm still,
Page 2.
I would like to commend the Chamber of Commerce. They have a number of large events that they plan very well, very safe, with traffic, with hygiene, with food, with vendors, good entertainment. I'm there. So this is a good event, so I just want to move it along. We are talking about exempting the Family Night on the Farm or the Chamber from the CUP. And then the question is whether we can then require standards.
Well, in place of the current large assembly ordinance standards, which I don't believe you can do without an amendment to the ordinance.
Okay, so we have to do it.
The vote could be anything you want.
We have to do it in two steps, basically. We can waive the requirement for the CUP at this point for Family Night on the Farm, and then when we discuss the large gathering ordinance, we can make amendments there as needed.
Or you can schedule a public hearing at the next meeting to take the vote on whether input, but then the vote on whether you want to accept them completely.
Right, but I think before we can have a public hearing, we need to have the board discussion on the large gathering. That's my...
You would just be focusing on one specific piece, which is exempting family night on the farm. You don't have to consider the rest of the ordinance. You can do that at a later date.
Okay.
So,
Attorney Nuttall, thank you. Get us out of this mess.
I'm hoping to. I don't know that you're going to like my answer, but I'm hoping to. I'm reading section 2, the bottom of section 2, which says that the county board, after considering recommendations from the Planning and Environmental Services Director, makes a written determination attached to the application that a particular requirement may be waived or reduced. We don't have an application before us, and we don't know what those particular requirements that we would be seeking to waive or reduce would be at this point.
Well, how did the other attach those requirements to the application, right?
I don't know that we could.
Include that in the motion.
All I'm saying is that we can waive specific things of an application, and we don't have an application.
But we're saying, if you read, before any license may be issued, we're saying they don't need a license.
We would have to change the...
No, we're saying they don't need a license by my motion, that they're on this list. They don't need they don't.
You can't change the ordinance today. You can waive the conditional use permit, but you can't change the ordinance today. To change the ordinance to not require them to have to get a license, we would need to go through the public hearing process for an ordinance amendment.
So in other words, what we would have to do is, if the site has some different characteristics, there might be a slightly different list of requirements. Okay, and that was the issue why they maybe were not included in the first place, is because the site rotates within the county, which is very good and very fair in terms of seeing a variety of farms. Well, that's...
But if you read the bottom of page 2, and again, the beauty of the law and ordinances is interpretation. It says the following requirements apply unless the county board, after considering recommendations from environmental service director or director's designated rep, makes a written determination. Okay, so we're going to enter this into the written record, attach, to this application, that a particular requirement may be waived. Such waiver or reduction of any requirement, so I'm saying they don't need a permit, shall be based on individual factors relative to a particular large assembly. They've addressed it here. Such factors include. So I'm just saying, that's the way I read it. Try to make it simple, easy, and less work for staff.
Does anyone care to restate the motion at this time?
Well, what do you have there? So the motion is to exempt Family Night on a Farm conducted by Winona County Chamber of Commerce from the ordinance regulating large assemblies, to put them on the item G, the exempt, the ordinance shall not apply, add them to that item G, and put into the record the conditions, as conditions what has been provided us by the Winona Area Chamber of Commerce Health and Safety Planning process.
Okay, Attorney Nuttall, please.
Just want to clarify that you're asking to amend the ordinance today, which you can't do.
I read somewhere I can put them on this exempt list. Now, I don't remember. I'll have to go back and all the documents I read.
You can waive their need for a conditional use permit today. You can't put them on the exempt list because that would require inserting them into the ordinance onto that particular list, which is an amendment to the ordinance.
Okay, so put a public hearing April 9th to add them to the list of exempt functions.
Can we say to discuss adding them, or just...
No, we're not going to discuss it again. We're just going to add them to it. under consent business.
That would, we're gonna amend the.
I'll have to go back and read, I mean, I read a number of things, and again, it's a matter of interpretation, how you come to
Okay,
the same.
now, you just restated the motion. Is that agreeable to the seconder, the way it was restated? The way it was restated is to exempt family night on the farm or the chamber from the ordinance, from the large, from the ordinance requirements of the large assembly permit by adding them to item G, which waives them, and adding the requirements provided by the chamber today. And we've had legal opinion that we can do this maybe in two steps. One is to waive the CUP requirements today, and then on April 9th have a public hearing to amend the ordinance to include them on the exempt list. And that would accomplish both issues, I think, that have been in discussion. We could waive them today, and we could discuss adding them to amending the ordinance on April 9th. Does that seem to be a way forward?
It does.
Okay. Is that agreeable, that we waive them today from the CUP requirement, which is different than, that was the way the motion was originally stated.
Right.
But when you restated it, you said exempt them from the ordinance requirements for the large assembly by adding them to the ordinance and add requirements. We've had legal.
So now you have me totally confused. I just want them to.
I'm confused.
Waive them.
No,
Waive them.
we can waive them today.
Okay,
and
waive them
on
today.
April 9th, hold a public hearing.
Waive them today.
To exempt them.
To exempt them
And then
on
to
the
exempt,
9th.
Right.
exempt on the 9th,
Yes.
April
Right.
9th.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay.
So we can do both things, allowing everything to go forward as smoothly as possible, which is, I think, the board's will. Did you have something else?
Oh, Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt. Just a question for Administrator Fritz, if, and you, Madam Chair, if it would be desirable to have a board work session on the permit itself prior to this discussion, because it could identify some other spots that staff, along with legal, could go back and work on. It wouldn't change anything about what you want to get accomplished at the board meeting itself, but.
So you're saying have a working session prior to April 9th?
No, let's not muddy the waters anymore.
We got a way forward.
My opinion is that would introduce additional information into the discussion about one item and probably broaden the item for the next meeting, and that wouldn't be fair because the public hearing would only be centering on one issue. So without having that information ahead of time to be able to say that it's in consideration of the public hearing, it really doesn't follow the process. So I don't think we have enough time to do that. I think we should look at the revising the ordinance after this issue, this specific issue is addressed, at least for this year, or if it's addressed for the future too. But I don't think we should be able to do that in that one session.
So you're saying we can revise the ordinance after the working session on the large gathering?
Yeah,
permit?
you may have already, depending on the board outcome of the public hearing and the board's vote after that, you may have exempted Family Night on the Farm, but that doesn't mean that the ordinance doesn't need revision. It still needs revision.
But that's really a separate issue.
It's a separate issue.
Correct. Just wanted to get clarification about what to prepare for the board.
Okay, but if we have a public hearing on April the 9th, we don't, that's just a public hearing. We approve it later.
Well, you could approve it that it could be on the agenda.
But we would approve it before we have the discussion on the large gathering ordinance?
That's a different issue.
Separate issue.
Different issue.
Oh, okay.
We're just doing the exemption.
Okay. All right. So the motion is to waive the CUP requirement for Family Night on the Farm or Chamber of Commerce, and that's the motion. Is that correct?
It'd be two motions. That's the first motion.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, and then the second one is to hold a public hearing.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so no further discussion. All those in favor of ending discussion on waiving the CUP requirement for Family Night on the Farm / Chamber of Commerce signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, so the question's been called. Let's vote on the motion to waive the CUP requirement for Family Night on the Farm / Chamber of Commerce. No further discussion. All those in favor of waiving that requirement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, oppose. Motion passes. Okay, so do we have a second motion to amend the large gathering ordinance?
It's a public hearing on the April 9th meeting
To
to have Family Night on the Farm added to the exempt list.
Yeah. But it is a zoning change. I mean, it is a change to the ordinance change.
It's an ordinance change,
Not a zone.
Okay, so we want to have a public hearing April 9th to add Family Night on the Farm to the list of waivers, or the list of exemptions, in the Winona County zoning ordinance.
No, the large assembly.
In the large assembly process permit. Okay, any further discussion on that? Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Jacob, to hold the public hearing on April 9th to add Family Night on the Farm to the list of exemptions in the large gathering permit. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you.
I'm going to take another quick recess.
Yeah.
Okay, we've had a request for a timeout. Okay, call us back into order. We're up to item 6.4 on the agenda, discuss township officers' request for revision of zoning ordinance.
Well, and this was at the request, I think we all got the letter, but yeah, at the township officer meeting. But I think, not sure if this, we just need to direct this to go to the planning commission to discuss further. Because there's a lot of implications here when you get a parcel that's bordered with more, townships than just one. Or sometimes it could be 4 and stuff, so. So I would just move to direct this to discussion at the county planning commission.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to move this item to the Planning Commission for further discussion and recommendation. Motion by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Meyer. Any discussion? Commissioner Jacob.
Well, we need to somehow notify the Township Officers Association, because I don't know who wants to be included in the representation of their concerns. So, I think they need to somehow be invited to that planning commission meeting.
Absolutely, yeah. You're right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
I think the motion is still fine, just.
Okay.
In the
Any
directive,
further
to
discussion?
staff. Make sure.
I believe that planning department director had wanted to make a comment.
Ms. Qualley, Department Head Qualley.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I attend the Township Officers meeting and was there the evening that this topic came up, and I had researched it prior to that on the request of Warren Township, and would be happy to coordinate whatever decision is made with the township officers and report out to them at the next meeting for the result of their letter.
Well, I think what we're saying, though, is that when this discussion comes up, make sure the township officers know that it's going to be discussed, so if they want to come and be part of a public discussion, hearing.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay,
We'll
that's
take care of making sure that they have that opportunity to do so and that they're well noticed.
Right, let's not make the decision and tell them what we decided, let's let them help make the decision.
Right, of course, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this issue? On this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to send this topic to the Planning Commission for discussion and recommendation, including notifying the Township Officers Association of this time and place. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, thank you. Item 6.4. We're up to item 6.5, and that's Mr. Moga. Receive the monthly finance and budget update for January 2019.
I'll go over the January update. For January in the revenues department, we started with 14.1. We had actual revenues of $269,000. $1,000. Actual expenses are 1.6. Ending cash was 12.6. For the whole year, exact same numbers because we're doing January's. So the variance for January this year in the revenue fund was a negative 1.4 compared to last year at the same time a negative 1.5. Total at the very bottom was a negative 2.3 compared to a negative 2.7. So any questions on this document? If not, we'll move to the next document, summary cash flow. Beginning cash started 18.6. Actual revenues are 856,000. Actual expenses are 3.1. Ending cash is 16.3. And the numbers, the variances are the negative 2.3 compared to a negative 2.7. Any questions on this document? And we'll move to the summary budget. In the summary budget at this point, once I get there, we're 8% of the way through the year in January. The only one that is above the 8% at this point is the general expense, general revenues. And the reason of that is a lot of uploaded front expenses. We pay a lot of insurances, worker comp, and they're all one-time expenses. Any questions on this document? If not, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moger. Item 9.1, discuss the criteria to evaluate the outside agency funding requests.
Maybe I need to adjourn first.
Yeah, you have to adjourn from this working session. So.
Oh, okay, excuse me.
Move to adjourn. Before we do that, we usually do comments.
Yes, comments.
Yep. Okay.
Where did I write those down? Commissioner Ward, I know you had.
Tonight is a big night for townships, township annual meeting, set the budget, and elections. So if you live in a township, please partake, because that's really the grassroots of our democracy. And again, just want to say thank you to all the snow plowing people, both at the state and the county and even the townships. I found it very helpful. If people don't know the MnDOT 511 website, even now you get very accurate pictures that are uploaded periodically. So if you got somebody traveling or you're traveling, you can see what you're driving into or driving out of. Yeah. It's very, very good, and it's quite up to date. So I was watching I-90 on Sunday just to see how, because of all the wind and everything, and it was good information to have. So check the MnDOT web if you are traveling in Minnesota. But thank you to all the people who are removing our snow. Now let's hope it goes down slowly so we minimize the flooding.
Yeah, ditto on that. I have two requests for additional agenda items. One, we removed the city-county human rights discussion from today's agenda because the person removed his application. There are still some issues regarding the Human Rights Commission, how the county participates, how we're notified, what information we have following meetings, those kinds of things. So I would like to put the Human Rights Commission on a future agenda so that we can update ourselves on who's representing us, how the commission works, and how we get notified of information from the commission. So I'd need a second to add that.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay, the other item to add to the future agenda is the Great River Rail Committee met last Thursday, and before that we had a possible resolution that was asked of different boards. I thought it might be on today's agenda, but we do have a resolution in support of the second train, which I think the county could discuss and then see what we feel about a resolution. So I'd like to put that on a future.
We do? Yeah, we already did that.
Oh,
it was
perfect.
Under consent.
I thought I was kind of going.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait a second.
How many trains you want coming through? I have to
Okay.
stop for them often enough.
Okay, it's not that.
All right, then.
Chris, tell your husband that, because he asked that.
Well, the city did approve. Okay, my mistake. Perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
That's even better. We don't want to do it again.
No.
Okay.
No.
I will tell him that.
Commissioner Jacob, you had a
My
comment.
mind was going.
I'm just going to remind people, March 19th, event called Promoting Modern Agriculture. It'll be down at Riverport Inn. Well-attended, good event. Come out and learn about our agricultural industry. So that's all I have.
Okay. Take a motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Jacob. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay.